Hello everyone, welcome on in. It is time for more Gale Saiyan, even though it's not Saturday. It's one of those, yeah. Because Saturday, I went to a con, so I couldn't possibly stream. Maybe if I left earlier than I did, but I don't regret leaving when I did, so... Right, full screen mode. There we go. But yes, we are continuing. We have started chapter 8. How exciting. Or 2, whatever that means. Bonner arrived at Phrygia 30 minutes after the time Momose asked him to be there. Bon, you're late. Momose yelled at him as soon as he arrived. Bon shrugged and gave her a half-hearted smile as he walked over to her desk. He hadn't brought her any sweets today. A decision he was beginning to regret. No, where's Yua? Not working on his own today. So you're slacking off while the kid does all the work, huh? No, I'm working too, you know. I was up all night doing research, I'll have you know. I've learned a whole lot about what teenage girls are up to these days. Uh-huh. I'm not even sure what to say to that. So, if I'm here, that means you managed to make contact with the kid. They're here now. That's my Momo. Is she cute? Momose gave the grinning Bon a slap on the head. She put her wrist into it too, and it hurt pretty bad. Good, he deserves it. Grow up, you old pervert. It was a joke, okay? Bon had to ask Momose for a favor. He'd wanted to talk to somebody involved in the new gen cases directly, and asked Phrygia to make it happen. His questions were, for the moment, not going to be directly linked to the police investigation. He couldn't talk to her in an official capacity, at least without somehow getting the rest of the team involved. Momose headed for a corner of the office, motioning for Bon to follow her. There was a small space there, surrounded by shelves lined with files. This space served as a meeting room for talking with clients. There were 2 sofas, each with room for 2 people, and both far too big for the cramped little area. When Bon followed Momose inside, he saw a girl sitting there. She was wearing a Suimei Academy uniform. Her shoulders were slumped, and she was looking down. She looked exhausted. Hi, Peachy. Welcome on in. What do you mean, there we go? Did you have issues getting onto Twitch or something? Sorry for keeping you waiting. Of course it's you. The girl looked up in surprise as Momose spoke. Her glasses slid on her nose a little, forcing her to push them back into place with her fingers. The screen for my stream was frozen. You had to refresh the page. Rip. No. I'm fine. She looked a little scared as she bowed shallowly to Bon. He was kind of hurt by this. Bon always tried his hardest to try and come off as unthreatening. Okay, cop. He realized, though, that he must still be giving off the intimidating air of a professional police officer, though. Yeah. It's something he would have had to keep working on, he realized. You are Kusunoki, correct? Yes. You're the twin sister of Mia, the deceased. Is that right? Oh. Interesting. Yua flinched a little before nodding. The first new gen case was the group dive. One of the victims who jumped was a girl named Mia Kusunoki. Ah. Come on now. Calm down a little. I'm not here to interrogate you. We're just having a little chat. X'd it out. Before I get to the point, can I ask you something? What are your thoughts about your sister's death? Bon, you can't possibly expect her to. Sorry. It's just part of my job. Tact is one of the first things you lose as a police officer. I'm just curious. The task force down at the station was talking about it too. They said Mia Kusunoki's family was unusual. Ban! No, it's fine. Momose had almost leapt out of her chair at Bon's rude question, but Yua herself stopped her. I think it's strange myself. And the 5 kids who died in the group dive had absolutely no reason to commit suicide. Their family and friends all said the same thing. But Mia's family was the sole exception. Bon took his fan out of his belt and began to wave it at his face. They didn't say anything. It didn't make any kind of fuss. And they were so quiet about it that it was strange, everyone said. Why do you think that was the case? Ever since Mia died, Mom and Dad have been weird. There was pain in her voice. At first, on the day they heard Mia had died, they cried. Mom and Dad looked like they were in a lot of pain. But the next morning, for some reason, they were happy and smiling. They were exactly back to how they'd been before Mia died. It only took a single day. I didn't understand. I thought that maybe the two of them were just trying to forget her. And then Dad was smiling, and he said, I don't even have a sister. When I showed them her clothes and shoes, it didn't faze them at all. And they said they were all just the extras they bought for me. And then they started turning off the news and ignoring the police. Damn. They're trying to forget that Mia ever existed. And so they're going to pretend you weren't twins? And that's why they started chasing off the police and telling them they only had one daughter. Mia and I were identical twins. We were impossible to tell apart. But my parents hated her. Well then. She would always hide away her own feelings and put me first. As Yua talked, she remembered her old life. For example, one year when she was in elementary school, her parents had bought a present, a single giant stuffed bear. Yua was excited, but Mia said she didn't like stuffed animals and ignored it. Her parents had disliked how Mia refused to act like a little child should. Still, Yua had quietly offered to share the stuffed animal with her, but Mia had refused. I don't need a stuffed animal, you can have it, was all she said. A month or so later, though, when Yua had gotten tired of the stuffed animal, she'd woken late at night to see something surprising. Mia was holding the stuffed bear and talking to it, with such a happy look on her face. Yua had never seen her sister look so happy. It was only then that Yua realized her sister was lying about not wanting the bear. She'd been lying so that her sister could have it all to herself. The next day, Yua looked under Mia's pillow and found a cute picture of a bear she'd drawn. Mia had been sleeping with it in her arms until Yua got tired of the stuffed animal. Things like that had happened over and over again for the past 18 years. It was always Yua who blew out the candles on the birthday cake. Mia would say, "That's stupid, I'm not doing it." Her parents would get angry. Yua had made it into Suime Academy, a private school, but Mia had deliberately behaved badly in class, lowering her grades and making sure she got sent to a public one. Her parents hadn't had the money to send both of them to private schools. No matter what Yua tried to do for Mia, Mia would always put her sister first, even if it meant making other people hate her. In the end, I took advantage of Mia's kindness and had all the fun while she suffered. Only after she was gone did I realize there was more I could have done for her, and I really regret it. I wish I could have died in her place. And then, not only that, her parents are trying to forget about her. It's not fair. It's just too sad. That was all the talking she could do. She took off her glasses and put her hands over her eyes as she began to cry. Momose sat next to her, kindly patting her on the back. So Yua has been investigating the case on her own, she says. To find out what exactly happened to her, Mia. That must have been difficult. She's found a name. Momose looked over to Bon, still holding Yua close. Takumi Nishijo. I see. Bon stroked the stubble on his chin and leaned forward. I heard from one of the local detectives that there was a teenage girl who was running after Nishijo one day. Was that you? She nodded at him apologetically. Interesting. I like to hear. I was gonna say I'd like to hear more, but give me a second. Bon chuckled and bobbed his head at Yua and Momose. He'd been cut off by the sound of his phone ringing from within his suit pocket. He quickly took it out and looked at the LCD screen. It was showing Sua's name. Hello? What is it? It's happened. The 7th murder. What? Sua's voice was tense. Bon could hear the sound of the other police officers frantically running around him. From the sound of it, Sua was at the station. In the 7th New Gen case. Bon's eyes went wide, and then he bit his lip bitterly. Momose and Yua could tell by his demeanor that something had happened, and were looking at him, worried. 3 victims, all friends. All of them had their bodies torn in half. Oof. Their top and bottom halves were stitched with one another, and sewn together with a monofilament, fishing wire, basically. Interesting. And there are injuries to their faces that look like the letters Q, D, and N. Hang on. Assisting litter box, some kind of message. It's too early to say. There's something else too. The autopsy found something. The bodies weren't cut in half with a saw or knife, or anything with a blade. What do you mean? The coroner says they were ripped apart by some kind of incredible force. Eek. Ripped apart? Bon repeated that to himself as he scratched his head, roughly with the hilt of the fan. Like by some kind of giant monster. Or maybe one of those mages that everybody seems to be talking about these days. Are you serious? I'm a big movie buff, but even I can get behind what you on that one. It's called an example, you idiot. Now, get back to work. He hung up the phone. And the sun started setting earlier once November came. Yeah, that's right. Accurate. It is officially November. God damn it. By the time I was ready to go home with Rimi after class, a pale orange color was settling over the sky. I'm sorry. Rimi had been silent until then, but suddenly she apologized. You had a really rough time, right, Taku? It was the first time in a while we'd gone home together. I was so happy she'd come back. She offered to go home with me today again, for one thing. We'd only gone home together twice now, so I was afraid she might want to stop, but that didn't happen. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you. Somebody I knew got hurt in that earthquake. And I was taking care of them. Remy brought up the subject, even though I hadn't asked. Okay. But to be honest, I wasn't even hearing most of what she was saying. Attentive. And the bandage I'd seen on Nanami's wrist at lunch, I couldn't get out of my mind. Are you mad? I missed my chance to talk to her then. Well, no, I'd gotten scared. Nanami was my little sister. I was her big brother. But something felt so strange. The nurse had said Nanami wasn't hurt. The hand that Shogun had sent me had disappeared from the fridge in the base. It was all supposed to be a delusion. So why would she have a bandage around her right hand? Maybe I was just overthinking things and she got a burn or had a nasty bug bite. That had to be it. Right? That was the most sensible answer, right? But I was still afraid of finding out. I had been able to help her, but here I was, too gloomy to even talk to her. I was a really awful big brother. Hey, Taku. Hello. Hello. If you're mad, then say so. Being ignored kind of hurts. Huh? I looked at Rimi. She was sad. Huh? Were you not listening to me? I hesitated a moment before nodding. She poked a finger into my cheek and pushed. Good. Snap. I thought you were ignoring me. Don't confuse me like that. Ow, her nail. Her nail was digging into my skin. You okay? Rimi whispered, finally pulling back her hand. Yeah, that was always what she said when she was worried about me. You've been kind of pale since lunchtime. You seem kind of down today. Was somebody mean to you? If so, tell me. I'll go get mad at them. She was like a big sister, or my mom. Yumi could be pretty nosy, I can read. Well, she'd have to be, if she could care about a weird loser like me. I appreciated the fact that she was worried about me, until now. Whenever I'd had a problem, the only options were to keep it to myself or write an anonymous post on the @cham. Maybe I should ask her about Nanami. But when I asked her about the D-sword, she hadn't believed me at all. She'd reacted like any sensible person would. If I told her, she'd either laugh it off or be freaked out. If that was the case, it'd be a waste of time to try. All I needed from Mimi was for her to be by my side. I could ask Kozupi or Senna for help with this problem instead. This place is as filthy as ever, huh? Mimi whispered in exasperation as she stepped inside the base. But despite her complaints, she seemed happy, so I couldn't tell what she was really thinking. This place hasn't changed at all. The only one I know who keeps the room this messy. If it's that bad, then you clean it. I decided to turn on my computer. Hey, are you turning on your computer the minute you walk in the door? You got a friend over. Why don't you offer her something to drink or something? Come on, let's chat. Remy asked me for the impossible as she sat down on my sofa. If I tried to have a one-on-one chat with a 3D girl, I'd run out of things to discuss almost instantly. Lately, I had more chances to talk to Remy, and I'd started to get used to talking to her, but I still wouldn't last even 5 minutes. And right now, my head was full of thoughts of Nanami, and I didn't feel up to having a cheerful conversation. I was sure it would look like I was ignoring her. I sat down in my chair feeling like a pathetic loser. I see how it is. If that's how you're going to be, then I'm going home. Have fun without me. I could hear Remy standing up. I turned around in surprise, and she was heading towards the door. Hey. I tried to tell her to stop, but I was in such a panic I couldn't get the words out. Suddenly, she stopped and turned her head to look back at me. Hey, you worried about your sister? Huh? How did you know? I hadn't said a word about Nanami to her. You're mumbling something about her. Hey. Who's more important? Your sister or me? That was the worst question imaginable. You know how it is. There are mean girls out there who like to ask questions they know you can't answer. They only care about themselves. They don't care about you at all. I never thought I'd actually hear those words spoken in real life, though. This was the ugly part of 3D girls. In the end, Remy was just another one of them. To be honest, I was disappointed. I felt stupid for even trying to open up to her. I should have known that 3D could never beat 2D. I decided to just stop hanging out with her altogether. All of my interest in her instantly faded, and I let out an annoyed sigh. I wasn't going to stop her from leaving. In fact, I wanted her to go right now. But then, Remy did something unexpected. Answer me. Who's more important? Your sister or me? She took what looked like a paring knife out of her bag and put it up to her wrist. I was stunned and terrified. Choose me. I want you to look at me and nobody else. Pairing me. Was that supposed to be a threat? Was this who she really was? Was she actually insane? Please. Look at me. But you don't only look at me. I made the mistake of giving her a serious response. You're supposed to just ignore crazy girl threats. I regretted it, but it was too late. I do. Her voice was horribly cold. Her eyes were bloodshot. There was a mocking smile on her lips. And that's why I have to get rid of any potential rivals. I'm the one who kidnapped your sister. You're lying. I'll do anything to make you choose me. Even this. And then, Remy took the knife that was pressed up against her wrist and slowly began to draw it across her skin. Stop. Huh? Stop what? Suddenly, I was staring at my computer monitor again. I could hear Remy behind me. She sounded confused. Fair. I quickly turned around and saw she was sitting on the sofa. She had a manga in her hand and was looking at me, stunned. Taku, what's wrong? You look pale. Oh, nothing. Oh, it was just a delusion. That one scared me. You've got mail, dork. Wow. What was that?
Yeah.
No, Greenreach has just heard my Seroton email voice. That was really embarrassing. I opened my email program and saw 3 messages from Grim telling me to get my ass in the chat room. I realized that I hadn't chatted with Grim in a while. We used to talk all the time. But since I've been staying off ESO, we hadn't talked for 10 days. About 10 days, rather. Hey. Hey, and I've been waiting. We got new nice guy. I can read. We got what? Too lazy to find AA. New gen, dude. New gen. New gen equals nice guy. New gen NG nice guy. Should be that hard to figure out, right? Anyways, it's here. The 7th murder. What's wrong? Hearing this had noticed my surprise, because she stood up and came over next to me. She peered at the monitor from over my shoulder. The 7th murder. Another one. Another new gen murder. How long has this been... How long was this going to keep happening? Will the next one be the one where they finally got me? Or the one after that? Taku, you don't need to worry about it. There's nothing to be afraid of. They're not after you, Taku. Everything you're feeling is just a paranoid delusion, okay? She was trying to cheer me up, but she had no evidence at all. It wasn't gonna make me feel better than me. Anyway, had Grim gotten a job at the new gen advertising division or something? He was constantly telling me about them whenever one happened. That's good. He posted a bunch of links to news sites. This must have been his way of telling me to look at them. I'll click the link and bit down hard on my lip. Seventh new gen case. DQN puzzle. At 4:50 a.m. on the 4th, the bodies of 3 men were found hanging from a transmission tower along the train tracks of Shibuya Ward, Tokyo. The bodies belonged to 3 Shibuya residents, a college student named Saburo Anzawa, a part-time worker named Ro Takagi, and Kohei Fujita, who was unemployed. A police investigation revealed that the bodies of all 3 had been severed at the waist, and that the cut did not appear to have been made cleanly as if by a blade. The lower and upper halves of the deceased were each attached to different bodies, sewn together with sturdy thread. The letters D, Q, and N were found on their foreheads, which the police believe may be a message from the killer. Pictures of the crime scene were uploaded to @channel, a major internet message board before the media's reports, and is already being called the 7th in the so-called New Generation Madness cases. Users of the board have named the DQN puzzle due to the way the bodies of the victims were. DQ in Dokyun is a word used to refer to a thug or a person who lacks common sense. Some members of the families are preparing to take legal action against certain inappropriate commentaries by @channel users, and reaction online has been mixed. A new gen, Kitakore! Whose eyes are those? I got 3 corpses ripped apart at the waist, Dokyun written on their foreheads. Lol, Dokyun, lol. This is the new gen. The cops are idiots. You're trying to say that we Dokyun hating @channelers are behind it? The way to rip the bodies apart and put them back together is kind of like a puzzle. I wish they replaced my top half with that of a hot guy. Got that fake psychic Nishijo to tell you who's behind it. It's the New Generation Madness, and I can't bear it. Group dive, pregnant man, crucified, vampire, or brain dead, yummy hat, and Dokyun puzzle. At approximately 4:50 a.m. today, a newspaper delivery man found the bodies of 3 men hanging from a utility tower near the train tracks in Shibuya. A police investigation revealed that the bodies belonged to 3 Shibuya residents: a college student named Saburo Anzawa, a part-time worker named Ryo Takaki, and Kohei Fujita, who was unemployed. All 3 had their bodies severed at the torso, and the top and bottom halves were switched with another of the murdered men. Strange, distinctive injuries were found on their foreheads, which the police believe may be a message from the killer. Shibuya has suffered from a number of bizarre murders over the past 2 months, and authorities are treating this as another in the same series of incidents. The last video I saw showed the faces of the 3 murdered men. I recognized their faces. It's them. You know them? They mugged me yesterday. I gave them my wallet, but they still attacked me anyway. I passed out, and when I woke up, Kozupi was there. The 3 of them were covered in blood. I took my wallet out of my pocket and stared at it. When I'd woken up, Kozupi was holding my wallet, and she'd given it back to me. Could she be the one who... No, that wasn't right. When I'd seen them last, their faces were smashed up and they were covered in blood, but they certainly weren't sliced in half. They'd been killed after Kozupi and I had left. It had to be Shogun. He was taunting me. He was trying to destroy my mind. I felt like I was about to throw up. My stomach was racked with pain. I put my hands up against it hard to try to make it go away. Would I be next? Would the next one finally be the one where I was killed? That's all for today. A hand reached out from behind me and flicked the switch on the monitor. The screen went black. Calm down. You don't need to worry about it. It's just a coincidence. I'm sure of it. I couldn't really be so calm. There's no way this all could just be a coincidence. Anyway, I'm hungry. There's a place I'd like. Why don't we go get dinner there? It's nice and cheap, and the food is good too. I guarantee it. Though, it's mostly older guys in there. It's a little embarrassing for me to go by myself. No, and we have to go inside the station. It's inside the station building. There's one of the There's one on the clockwise side of the Yamanote line, and one on the counterclockwise side. But I think the one on the counterclockwise side is way better. Dinner, huh? I didn't feel like eating at all. I felt like there was a knife at my throat. Like somebody was saying they could kill me at any time. Please, just leave me alone. What did I ever do to you? I'm just so tired of all this all. I can read so good. Ayase Kishimoto was staring out the window, only half paying attention to anything going on around her. There were no bars at the windows like there were in the rooms at Arcart Medical, the place she'd been at before. Outside she could see the high-rise buildings of Shinjuku, and beyond them, a blazing evening sky. A few pigeons were flapping their wings furiously as they crossed the sky. Occasionally, she would wince in pain. Her eyes were empty, and just a little tired. Her lips weren't humming the songs that had so entranced the young people of Shibuya. After her failed suicide attempt, she'd been brought to a big general hospital in Yoyogi. Her wounds had almost completely healed. The doctors had said it was a miracle that a fall from that height had ended in only a few minor scrapes and bruises. Still, she'd hit her head hard, so she's been hospitalized for observation. She's been here over a week already. Of course, observation meant nothing more than a simple checkup once every 2 days. The rest of the time she was left alone. She had the room to herself. There were no other beds in it. Her D-sword was up against the window. It was flashing with a pale light. It had been there the whole time, but nobody had noticed it. She didn't get many visitors. Phantasm fans were, supposedly, coming in huge numbers every day, but the hospital had banned them from seeing her so they wouldn't bother the other patients. She and her family weren't close. Almost nobody else came to see her. Her bandmates had come to see her once. When she brought up breaking up the band, though, they stopped coming at all. I mean... Kishimono, did your thermometer go beep? The door opened and a nurse in white came in. Yase slowly turned toward her, and then took the thermometer out from under her arm like she just remembered it was there. The nurse looked at the number on the digital display and wrote it down on the chart. 37.1 degrees Celsius.
ちょっと熱っぽい
You
かし
got a
ら
mild fever, maybe.
ズキズキするわ
My head
頭
hurts. Yase winced in pain again.
あら
Oh
また
my,
頭痛
another headache.
でもそれは薬の
It's a
副
side
作用
effect
よ
of the medicine, though.
気にしなくてもそのうち良くなりますよ
The nurse smiled as she spoke and took the thermometer. Her expression was gentle, and there was something about her that put a patient at ease. But Ayase put her hand to her forehead and shook her head. Ever since she came here, Ayase had been dealing with a dull headache. Painful wasn't the word for it. But there's an unpleasant sensation of something pulsing in her head. It was making it hard for her to think. And her whole body felt as heavy as lead. This has happened to Ayase before too. It was when she was at Art Cart Medical. The headaches had lasted 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. She'd been unable to sleep and emotionally unstable. It was a past she didn't want to remember. A past she sealed away. Her memories of 2 years ago. The pain was the trigger that made them come back in flashes. I see. A dark room. A small window with bars. Except for that small window, the walls were entirely covered with mirrors. She'd been restrained in a steel chair in the center of the room. And there was some kind of device on her head, with cords streaming off of it. Her hands were bound behind the chair's back. Her head was restrained and it was tilted up at a slight angle. There was no one else in the room. The only sounds were her panting for air and the straining of the metal chair. Drool flew from her lips. Drool flew from her lips, I can read. And a bestial howl came from her throat that one would have thought impossible for a girl her age. Kill me. Kill me! It was a very quiet form of torture. There's only one thing good they were doing to her. A single drop of water was falling on her forehead from above, and the same odd every time, at exactly 5-second intervals. That was all. She'd been stuck like that for 2 days with no rest. And now all she could think of is when the next drop would fall. Her senses were pushed to their limits. Each time a drop fell, it felt like every nerve in her body was being ripped apart. Like all the bones in her body were being shattered. Like a long, sharp awl was being driven into her skull. Like all the fluids in her body, blood included, were freezing. Like all of her skin was rotting and slowing off. I feel like I butchered that word there, but it was more than enough to drive her mad. Sloughing? Sloughing off? Is that how you read that? Okay. English is special. That's what happens when you mix a bunch of different languages together and fuck up all the rules of pronunciation, I guess, but sloughing, huh? She snapped back to reality and found herself panting and clutching the sheets tightly. Her whole body had started to shake when her dark memories came back. The nurse was gone from her room. It was dinner time, and there was a frantic rush of movement outside the doors. Yasi repeated the words that the nurse had said to herself. Was this headache really caused by the medicine? Or had she hit her head when she had fallen? It wasn't an effect of her old memories. She couldn't tell. Yase wiped away the sweat on her forehead and began to laugh. I don't care. I don't care what you do to me now. I survived divine punishment. I know exactly what I have to do. She whispered, as if in a trance. Then, suddenly, she heard a sound coming from the hallway. It was the pleasant sound of shoes on linoleum. They weren't the nurse's shoes, she could tell that much. The footsteps were getting closer to her room. There was a knock at the door. She pressed her lips together tightly into a frown. Hello there. It was a man. He was holding a fruit basket, the type commonly given as gifts. Yase recognized the man. Thus, she looked at him suspiciously. Hey there. Oh, don't worry. I'm not here to hurt you. I know. He was a detective with the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. He'd once been tailing her as a person of interest in the New Gen case. He scratched his head cheerfully. For a detective, he seemed surprisingly laid back. Oh, that makes me happy to have a pretty girl like you remember me, I mean. She's in high school, buddy. And you got a good memory. The detective walked toward her bed. Yase glanced at the eastward of the windowsill. It was too far away for her to reach and grab. And I was thinking you might want some company, so I brought you this fruit basket. You know, company, fruit basket. What more do you want to life? Who wouldn't want to be accompanied by a basket of fruit? I don't think that's true. What do you want? You're pretty sharp, huh? The detective acted like he was shaken, but it felt like a little like an act. Word order. Well, I guess there's something I want to ask you. Oh, here. This is for you. He offered her the fruit basket with an innocent smile, practically forcing her to take it by placing it at the foot of her bed. It's really good fruit. Also, it was really expensive. No thanks. Oh, come on, don't say that. I already spent the money on it. When your mom comes later, you can share it with her or something. Oh, whoops. You haven't seen your parents for years, have you? It was clear the detective knew exactly what he was doing, but he also didn't really care. Her parents had disowned her when she was very little. Oof. They were the type to really care about what the neighbors thought of them, and Ayase was a problem child that they were eager to be rid of. She was entirely cut off from them, though. They sent her enough money to cover her living expenses every month. Fair enough, I guess. Sorry. He gave her a little bob of his head in apology. Ayase was only now starting to recover from her flashback earlier, and didn't really want to talk to the detective at all. She decided to get this over with as fast as possible.
聞きたいことって
What did you want to ask me about?
アリバイ
My alibi?
違うっすよ。
Nah, we already
それは
talked
前
to
に
you
散
about
々
that
聞い
more
たし
than enough.
もう綾瀬ちゃんの
You're
容
not
疑は
under
晴れたっす。
suspicion anymore.
君は
You're
白
innocent. Completely
真っ
innocent.
目星はついたの
Do you have a suspect then?
犯人の
For the murders?
それは教え
I
られない
can't
んす
tell you
よ。
that.
捜査上
Classified
の秘密
information, you see.
匠
Takumi.
秘密っす。
It's a secret. The detective was grinning. He was clearly hiding something. When he left, he could really see just how young he was.
しかし西
Nishijo's
条君は不
certainly
思
a
議な少年
strange
っす
boy,
ね。
though.
彼を見ていると
He certainly
殺人
doesn't
の容
look
疑
like
者
a
には
murderer,
と
you
ても
know?
見えない。もしあれで本当
If
に
he
犯
really
人だっ
is
たと
the
したら、
killer, then he's
ま
a
さに
demon
人の
wearing
皮を
a
かぶっ
human
た悪
skin.
魔っす。
まだ容疑者なの
He's still a suspect, isn't he?
いや、そういう
No,
わけじゃないっ
that's
すよ。
actually not true. The detective laughed and shook his head.
あ、今の
Oh,
話、
don't
誰に
tell
も言っちゃダ
anyone
メ
I
っすから
said that.
ね。情報漏
My
洩する
bosses
と
get mad
上
when
司
I
に
leak
怒られるんす
information.
よ。
I mean,
まあ当然
of
なんです
course
け
they
ど。
do.
この前も先
My
輩の
partner
そ
screwed
ばっ
up
きりで
just the
怒
other
られた
day,
ばっ
and I
か
got
で。
yelled at for it.
綾瀬ちゃんも一度会
I
ってる
think
と思うん
you've
すけ
met
ど、
him, Ayase.
覚えて
Do you
るか
remember?
な。バンさんっていう
His name's Bon.
髪がボ
Older
サボサ
guy,
で
messy
無精
hair,
ひげ生やしたおっ
stubble
さんで
beard. Ayase remembered him. When they come to talk to her, it's the older man, not the one in front of her, who'd done most of the talking. He'd been pretty aggressive and sneaky too.
あの人がすぐ
He always yells
この
at
バ
me,
カ
you
っ
know?
て怒鳴るん
Calls
す
me
よ。
an idiot.
そのくせ自分は
But
本
what
来
does
の
he
捜査を
do?
せず
He
に
ignores
なん
his
か
job
わ
and
けの
goes
わ
off
から
to
ないこ
look
とばっ
into
か
weird
調べ
stuff.
て挙句の果てに自
And
分
then he
まで無
forces
理
me
や
to
り
come
付き合
with
わされ
him.
て最近
Lately,
胃が
I've
痛い
been
んす
getting the
よね。
worst stomach aches.
いやまあ
I
根
mean,
はいい人
he's a
です
good
し
guy at
勘
heart,
が異常
and
に
he's
鋭
really
い人で
smart.
過去に
Supposedly
も
he
難事
solved a
件をい
bunch
く
of
つか
really
解
tough
決に
cases,
導いたらしいん
but
す
you
よ
know.
ね。
その話をする
Is
た
that why
め
you came here?
ここに来たのは
To complain about your partner? The detective chuckled when Ayase cut him off.
あいや
No,
申し訳
sorry,
ないっす。
sorry. I lost
つい
control of
愚痴
myself
入
for
っ
a
ちゃったっ
moment.
すね。今の話は
Please,
全面的
don't
に
tell
内緒にし
anybody
てほ
what
しいっ
I
す。
said. I,
諏訪守
Mamoru
一
Suwa,
生のお願
I'm
いっすよ。
begging you.
それで
So,
一つ目は
first question.
なんであんなことを
Why did you do it? Even Ayase could tell he was talking about how she jumped off the roof.
もう何度も話し
I've
たわ
already told this story to the other detectives many times.
邪神王
To
グラ
stop
ジオールの復活を
Gladio,
阻
the
止するため
King
で
of
すか
Wicked Hearts from reviving? Was that it?
死ぬつもりなんて
It
なか
wasn't
っ
a suicide attempt.
た魂を
I was trying
一
to
つ
bring
上
my
の
soul
ステ
to
ー
a
ジに持
higher
ってい
plane.
こうとしただけ
That's all. So a suicide attempt. Got it.
例の若者の
You were
間で
saying
話題にな
something
った
similar
君の
about
歌
that
につい
song
て
of
も
yours.
似たよう
The
なこと
one
を
all
言ってた
the
んです
kids
よ
are
ね。
listening to. That was the second question. Ayase sighed a little.
ニュージェネのことを歌ったもの
That
なん
song's
じゃ
not
ないわ
about New Gen.
あの詩はグラジオール
It
記
was
録記
inspired
録
by
詩への
the
インスピレーシ
apocalyptic
ョンを受けて
psalms
作
of
っ
the
た
book of
第
Gladio.
3章
Chapter
102
3,
節
verse 102. Ugh. A fictional novel based on Eastern European legends of Gladio, the King of Wicked Hearts, a 23-volume fantasy series that depicts the war between 7 Black Knights and Gladio. Written by Arcio Ziegler, published between 1929 and 1951, and translated into several languages, but commercially unsuccessful due to its complex writing style. Other books in the Gladio mythos include The Great Book of the Kings of Gladio, Wicked Hearts chapter, and Letter from the Apostles. Together, they form the Gladio saga.
世界
Gladio,
邪神
the
は
King
グラ
of
ジオー
Wicked
ルが
Hearts,
現
is
れよう
about
と
to
してい
descend
る
upon our world.
復活を阻止するには
Seven stakes forged
グラ
from
ジオー
the
ルが流し
black
た黒
blood
い
he
血に
shed are
作られ
needed
た
to stop
7
his
つの杭
revival,
が必要悔いは剣へと
and the stakes
形
will
を変
become
え
swords,
神
passed
罰
into the
を乗
hands
り
of
越え
seven
た
black
7人の
knights who
黒
have
騎士の
overcome
手
the
に
divine punishment of God.
目には目を
An eye for an eye,
歯には
a tooth
歯
for a tooth.
邪神を背負い
Only
し人間
humans who
だけ
bear
が
wicked hearts out of
邪
their
神
own
を滅ぼせ
can
る
defeat the King of Wicked Hearts. It's kind of like a movie, huh?
そういう壮
I
大
love
な
it when
設定
they've
は
got a
好きっ
cool
す
backstory like that. Yes, his eyes narrowed at the detective's comment.
設定
It's not a story at all.
現実よ
It's real.
じゃあ最後の質問っ
Okay,
す
last question. The detective ignored her protests, but she was used to that. Nobody had ever believed what she had to say.
君や西条くんの他
We
にも
investigated a bunch of
水明の
Suimei
生徒につい
students
て何人
besides
か洗
you
ったんす
and
けどね
Nichijou.
うーん
He crossed his arms and allowed a little sigh. It felt like an obvious act, but Ayase wasn't inclined to call him out.
何
What?
その
This is a
すごく
really
バカバ
stupid
カしい質
question.
問なんすけど刑事が質
And I
問
know
す
it's
るよう
not
な
the
こ
kind
と
of
じゃな
thing
い
a
んす
cop's
よ
supposed to
ね
ask.
本当は子供じみてるっていう
It's kind of
か
childish.
そう
I see.
質問する気がな
If
い
you're not going to ask the question, then leave.
頭が
My head
痛い
hurts.
ああいや
Oh,
実はね
actually,
バンさん
Bun
が妙な
was
ことを言
saying
い出して
something
るんです
weird.
よ君たちは
That
Mahou
you guys
Tsukaiなん
might
じゃない
be
かって
mages. Yes, his eyes narrowed, just a little, at the phrase, you guys.
違いますよ
And
ね
that's not true, is it?
使えるわ
That's true. She looked down on her hands instead of at the detective as she spoke.
綾瀬ちゃんって
You're
面
a
白い子っす
fascinating girl,
ね
Yase.
でも
But
ニュージェネは
Nugent has
グラ
nothing
ジオ
to
ーリ
do
の
with
騎士
it.
と無
Bye.
関係
Blah 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 blah. Nugent has nothing to do with Gladio.
ああそうっす
Like,
か
see.
まあどうでもいいんすけど
Well,
ね
whatever. The detective yawned, disinterested in his words. And then suddenly an electronic sound filled the room. The detective frantically pulled a phone out of his suit pocket.
まずった
Crap,
病院って
you're not
携帯
supposed to
禁止
use
なん
your
すね
phone in the hospital. I forgot to turn it off.
うわ
What?
しかも女
And it's from a girl too.
付き合ってよ
I've got a girl I'm in
こんな
love
彼女
with.
がいるん
We've
です
been
よ
dating for 4 years. He grinned as he pressed the button to reject the call. He turned back toward Iyase.
綾瀬ちゃんは映画
You're
見
a
るんす
movie
か
buff, Iyase?
スパークウォーズって
You
知
ever
ら
heard
ない
of Spark Wars?
それに出て
That
く
was
る
Count
ダー
Darth
ス・スパイダー
Spider's
伯爵
theme.
のテーマなんす
He's a character
今
from
の
the
メロディー
movie. Not Count Darth Spider. She wasn't interested in movies at all. Nancy already decided that she was under no obligation to answer any more of his questions. He suddenly turned to look out the window.
実は自分スパ
I'm a
ークウォ
huge
ーズオ
Spark
タク
Wars
なんす
geek,
よ
you know?
あ興味ないっすか
You don't
それ
care?
失礼したっす
Sorry then.
じゃ自分はこれ
Anyway,
で
have a nice night. The detective left the room without waiting for her answer. He also didn't bother to watch him as he went. Her eyes were watching the sky as it shifted from twilight to azure night. You, dork. I was waiting for you for so long. I hate you, but I love you. I absentmindedly watched Sedaton move around my monitor. The final episode of Bloodtoon had aired late last night. The story had really picked up by the end, and Natchan reviewed it highly. This is my third time watching it, but I wasn't able to focus on it at all. I looked at the clock, and it was past 10 p.m. Mimi had left around 8. She cheered me up and given me kind words of encouragement. Having her here made me feel less lonely than I had been for the past week. But Mimi didn't seem to think things were as serious as they really were. It was as if she was trying to avoid any talk about New Gen. Maybe she thought I was annoying? She said somebody she knew had been hurt during the earthquake. Maybe she was busy dealing with that and didn't have time for me. No, but... Maybe I was paranoid, sure, but I was still in danger. I could be killed at any moment, even right now. There had to be some reason why Shogun was so obsessed with me. If I could figure it out, maybe it would give me some clue as to how to fight back.
そういえば
Actually,
あのおじさん
he'd said
別れ際
something
に
else
こ
just
んなこと
before I
言って
left.
たのら中でも一番
But the
特
most
別な
special
の
of
は
you all
その目
is the
誰の
boy
目
who created the
と
phrase,
産み落と
whose
した
eyes
少
are
年
those? Whose eyes are those? You couldn't go anywhere in Shibuya without hearing those words now. And online, everybody had even started using it as the killer's name. I've been using that phrase since I was a little kid. Shogun must have known that, and this was his way of sending me a message, or maybe challenging me. When did I start using that phrase? I feel like somebody had said it to me. I vaguely remembered writing it in an essay done in elementary school. I'd even made it the title, Whose Eyes Are Those? I could barely remember what the essay was about. No, I wanted to know. What had I written in it? Did they still have it at home? It was so old they'd probably thrown it out years ago. But I always had a habit of putting important things in a big, empty box of candy I'd kept. I called it my treasure box. There's a chance it was still there. What should I do? Should I head home and check? But I didn't want to have to face the enemy. I wouldn't know what to say.
はあ、僕は
I'm
どう
such
し
a
ようもなく
loser.
ヘタレだ。
Yes, you are. I slowly stood up from my chair, and then went over and slowly collapsed on the sofa. Yeah, what are you doing here?
これはその
This isn't what it looks like. It's not like eating cheap soba at a roadside stall is one of my favorite things to do, okay? Hey,
何ニヤニヤ
what are
してん
you
の
smiling
この
at,
ボケナ
dork?
スもう
Now I'm mad.
うなれ
Take this, samurai condenser. I looked up the ceiling, half listening to Sayura's dialogue. The ceiling was made of cold, exposed steel. There's nothing like knots of woods agreeing to look at me, for me to look at and pretend I was seeing a human face.
ん
Suddenly, in the corner of my eye, I saw a metal box with a design I recognized mixed in with the boxes of H games on my bed in the loft.
あれって
Is that... I leapt off the sofa and went up the little ladder to look at the bed. A square, reddish-brown box, about the size of a B5 sheet of paper. And on the lid was the word Sable. This is it. My treasure box. I must have brought it from home. I didn't remember bringing it at all, but... Good job, me. I brought it down from my bed and opened the lid. It was filled with old tests, essays, and scraps from my sketchbook. Most of it was papers and just a few tiny objects. I took them all out of the box and began to rummage through them. I found what I was looking for almost immediately. After all, it was at the very top. Whose eyes are those? An old, faded essay. The handwriting on the title was awful. Was there some important secret hidden here within these words? Something that Shogun was obsessed with? What did the homeless man mean when he said most special? I gulped and began to read, being careful not to miss a single word. Whose eyes are those? By Takumi Nishijo, Class 4-3. I dream a lot. In my dream, I'm a grown-up, and I get in a time machine and go see myself in the present. The grown-up me doesn't look like me at all. Also, there were a lot of buttons in the time machine. One turns on a shower, one gives you shampoo. I asked the grown-up me how it works, and he said you can go to caveman times or dinosaur times. He asked me what was my worst class, and I said math. He said there's even a switch that will make you good at math. I tried to flip the switch, and he got mad. He said I need to study harder instead. The grown-up me only got mad the one time. Other than that, he was nice. He told me which girl I'm going to marry and stuff too, but that's a secret. He also asked about God. He said God's real. I think he's real too. Mom said that God sees everything, so if I do bad stuff, he'll send me to hell. So I think I shouldn't do any bad stuff at all. I need to be nice to my little sister too. Mom said when you do bad things, it's not God that sees it and comes for you, but the scary man. The scary man is the whose eyes are those monster. If he looks at you, you go to hell. God's eyes and the whose eyes are those eyes are everywhere, and there are lots of them. They're in the sky and on the ceiling and the walls of that school. So I need to study a lot and do lots of good things, I think. But since they're always watching, it's embarrassing to go to the toilet or take a bath. Also, ever since I was little, when I'm not sleeping and I just close my eyes, I'll sometimes dream. My mind is like a game or a manga. But when I do that, the whose eyes are those comes, and so I don't want to do it. I asked Mom, she said never do it. But even when I'm writing this essay, I asked grown-up me in my dream about the time machine, and he says he knows about it. But I'm a kid, so he wouldn't tell me. So, from now on, I want to do lots of good things so I can beat the whose eyes are those monster, the end.
なんだかよくわ
What
か
the
らな
hell
い
was I
な。
talking about? About the only thing I got out of reading the essay was even back then. I've been able to sense the gaze of God. Maybe I was a really weird kid. It seemed impossible to get anything out of this bizarre essay. It'd be easier to decipher hieroglyphics. Or hieroglyphs. Then I noticed some scribbling on the back of the paper. I remember that back then, I loved to scribble on things. Whenever there was a picture of some important old guy in the social study textbooks, I'd always given him a funny-looking mustache or sunglasses, and I loved to make little flipbook manga in the corners of my notebooks. I started to have even more and more fun drawing. One time, I'd even had them buy me a sketchbook. Nobody ever told me I was good at drawing, though. I flipped over the paper to look at the scribbles, smiling a little as I remembered the past. And what I saw was incomprehensible scribblings. Incomprehensible, with one exception. There was something I had seen very recently.
IR2
IR2. Was it a formula? Something else? Maybe just a meaningless combination of letters and numbers? I couldn't tell. But... it was the same formula Shogun had shown me in the chat when he'd first made contact with me. Whose eyes are those? And IR2. Both of them were written on the back of this essay that I'd written many years ago. One of them I'd even forgotten myself. So, if Shogun knew it, that meant that he really had been reading my thoughts. Juan was staring closely at a file as he sat in Frisia's meeting room. Or rather, the small space in their office, surrounded by shelves that served as one. Yua was sitting across from him, looking timid and scared. Every once in a while, she glanced across from him. She looked like a little kid showing a parent her report card. Ban was reading the report she compiled on Takumi Nishijo and the new gen cases. It even had the chat log between Takumi and Shogun from the day before the crucified incident. Yua's conclusion was that Takumi was behind the new gen killings.
すごいわね。
Amazing.
これ
You
全部
looked
一
all
人で
this
調べ
up
た
by
の？
yourself?
はい、
Yes,
一応。
I guess. Yua looked down on her feet as Momose gave her the compliment. She seemed to be staring directly at the Garo froggy straps on her bag. She was talking to a police detective and the head of a private detective agency. They're professionals at this kind of thing. From their perspective, anything she tried to do on her own would probably just look like a child pretending to be a detective. But both Bottom and Mose were impressed with the quality of her report. This is pretty interesting stuff. I could tell you did your homework. The part about Takumi Nishijo having multiple personalities is especially intriguing. Nishijo Takumi has multiple personalities. The murders are occurring while the original personality sleeps, and another takes over. Yeah, this is fascinating stuff. But I think it's a little too far out there. You don't think that Nishijo is the killer? Can I tell you the truth? Yua's face tensed up for a second, and then she nodded. And the way the task force sees it, Takumi Nishijo isn't a suspect at all. Really? Was it just Yua? Mose was surprised too. Bon chuckled a little. He leaned back into his chair and put his hands behind his head. At least in terms of the crucified case, Nishijo is innocent. They were able to recover fingerprints from the stakes used to pin the body to the wall. We got fingerprints from Nishijo and tried matching them. They weren't even close. But... Yua began to turn pale, and her lips started shaking. As a theory she believed in so much collapsed right in front of her face, the first thing she felt was guilt all over the first thing she felt was guilt about all the things she'd said to Takumi. And thanks to this prints, we've almost got our suspect nailed down. Heh. We haven't told the media yet, though. By the way, it was actually Sue who figured that out. Sue was out there working hard, and you're here slacking off, huh? Actually, they kicked me off the new gen task force. What? And they found out I was looking up the GE rate stuff instead of doing my work. From Bond's perspective, there was actually no need for Suwa to call him and tell him about the 7th murder. He wanted to tell his junior partner that, but he had missed his chance. Listen, I told you to be more careful about this stuff. I guess it's my fault for telling you about the GE rate in the first place, though. Don't worry about it. The GE rate thing was something that I took a personal interest in. Anyway, we're still looking into the possibility that he might be involved in other cases besides Crucified. You may actually be right there. So the police are thinking Nugent isn't actually the work of one person? We can't say yet. But we just had our 7th case. Personally, I think there are multiple people behind this. Oops. I said too much. When they find out I said any of this, I'll lose my job. Get that off the record. He smiled mischievously and put his finger to his lips. So, no, to the point. Huh? He was surprised. She was sure that she'd be called out here to talk about Takumi. I wanted to ask you about your school. You know a girl named Sena Albi? She should be in your grade. Yua thought a little, and then shook her head apologetically. I think I've heard the name, but I've never spoken to her. Oh, I see. Is she the killer? No, this is a totally different case. I was at ball last night because I was looking into her. So all that stuff you were saying about looking up high school girls... Bon gave her a wink, then he quickly turned back to Yua. You ever heard any stories about a girl at your school who's, say, really good with magic tricks?
聞いたことは？
いえ、
No,
ありません
never.
けど。
さっぱり話が
I'm
見え
not
ないわ
following
ね。
this at all.
何のこと？
What are you talking about?
例えば
For instance,
何もない空間から
maybe a magic trick where she
剣を
makes a sword
取り出す
appear
よ
out
う
of
な
nowhere.
手品とか。
Yua's face jolted upwards. Her expression was filled with shock.
どうして
How did you
それ
know? Bond seemed a little surprised, despite being the one who'd asked the question. Not sneezing. 0 out of 10. Thank you.
心当たりがあるのか
You know something? Yua hesitated for a moment before giving him a firm nod.
どこで見た？
Where did you see it?
駅の近くの
In a tunnel near the
地下道です。
station.
西条くんと
Nishijo and
岸本さんが
Kishimoto were.
フェスだな。
You mean Fess,
そ
right?
れで
And Yua gave him a brief description of how she chased after Alchemy 2 weeks ago. How she'd gone to the manga cafe to talk to him. How she'd been a little too forceful when talking to him and he'd run away. How she chased him all throughout Shibuya. How he'd eventually lost her. Then when she was about to give up, she'd seen him and Yase going into a tunnel.
だから
So,
私
so I
そ
hid
の
at the
階段
top
の
of
上から
the stairs and
二
watched
人の様
them.
子をこっそり伺っていたんです。二人は階段
And
の
the
一
two of
番
them were
下
at
で
the bottom of the
何か
staircase
話してい
talking
て、
about something.
あ、
Now,
どんな
I
ことを
couldn't
話してい
hear
たかは
what they
聞
were
き取れなか
talking
ったんです
about,
けど、そしたら
but
突然
suddenly,
岸本さんが
Kishimoto made a sword
Kimo.
appear out of nowhere.
何もないところから取り出したんです。すごく大きな
It
剣で
was really big,
バッグにも
too
入
big
ら
to
ない
fit
ような。
inside a bag.
まさか。
No way.
俺が見た
Same
の
thing I saw.
え、
Huh?
俺が見たのは
When I
岸
saw
本じゃなか
it,
っ
it wasn't Kishimoto though.
た。さっき名前を出し
It
た
was the girl I
青い
just
セナっていう
mentioned,
少女。
Sena Aoi.
実は
We've been
葵
getting
が剣を
testimony
振り
about
回
her
してた
swinging
って
a
いう
sword around
目
all
撃証
over
言
Shibuya,
が
you see.
渋谷のあちこちから出てる。
その手品、
And I wonder if it's
渋谷
just
の
a
若い子
magic
たち
trick
の
the
間で
kids
流行
are
ってるの
into
かしら。
these days.
でも
But
私
what
が
I
見たあ
saw
れは
didn't look like a
手品
magic
には
trick
と
at
ても
all.
見えませんでした。それに
And
他にも何か見たの？
did you see something else?
信じてもらえ
I
るかどう
didn't
か
tell anybody
わからな
about
くて
this because
誰に
I
も
wasn't sure that
話した
anyone
こ
would
とは
believe me.
ないんですけど、あの時
But I
岸
didn't
本
just
さ
see
ん
her make a sword appear.
剣を出しただけじゃなくて、
Yua paused for a moment to wet her dry lips. She didn't seem sure whether or not she should speak. Her gaze was wandering about the room, looking anywhere but at the people in front of her. But eventually, she seemed to make up her mind and looked straight at Momose.
二人に
She split into
Bunshin.
two.
したんです。まるで
And
本
it
当
was
に
like
その
there
場に
were
二人
really
いる
two
みた
of
い
her
でした。
there.
私、
I couldn't
Waka ga
understand what was
wakaranakute.
going on at all.
うん
There was a heavy silence in the meeting room. None of the three of them seemed to have any idea what to say.
とにかく
Okay,
一体
so we
ど
don't
ん
know
な
how
種
they're
があるの
doing
かわ
it,
かんねえが
but it looks like
そん
there
な
are
手品
several
みたい
people
な
in
真似がで
Shibuya
きる
who
連中
can
が
do these
この
magic
渋谷には
tricks.
何人かいるらしい。まあそれと
And
岸本綾瀬
we
の
also know that
青い
Sena
瀬名
Aoi and Yase
西
Kishimoto
条
have
匠
made
と接
contact with
触したこ
Takumi
とは
and
確
Nishijo.
認済みだ。これが偶然
It's hard to
とは思えね
believe
えわ
that's
け
a coincidence.
西条くん、
Nichijo.
あの少年の周囲では
It feels like there's something
現実
very
離れしたこ
strange
とば
going
かり
on
が起き
around
てるような
that
気がする。
kid. Hunter remembered what he'd said during his phone call.
怪獣か魔法使い
If
で
we're
済ませ
lucky,
られるな
it
ら
was just
よっぽ
giant
どいいけど
monsters and mages. The other two didn't hear his whisper. Momose had one of her employees bring them tea to break the oppressive silence. She took a sip on the side. Then, she forced a smile and tried to change the subject.
ところでゆあちゃん、そ
So,
のカバンに
Yua,
ぶら下がってる
those
カエ
little
ル、
froggies on your
最
back.
近流行ってる
Are
んでし
those
ょ？
big with you kids these days?
は
Oh,
い
yes. Yua let out a sigh of relief. Glad to be off the subject.
なんて言うんだっけ？
What are they called again? Ghetto froggy.
ゲロカエルン
Ghetto
で
froggy.
す。
いろいろ種類が出て
There
る
are
ん
a
じゃな
lot
か
of
った？
different
10
types,
種類
aren't
ぐらい。
there? 10 or so?
はい。
Yes.
私はその
I just got them from
友
a
達から
friend.
もらっただけなの
I
で
really don't know
詳しく
much
は知ら
about
ないん
them.
ですけど。
なんだってこんな
Why
手
would
抜き商品
something
が流行
that
るんだ
was
ろう
made so
な。
lazily be so
見た
popular?
目だって
I'm
俺
way
の方
cuter
が
than these
ずっ
things.
と可愛いぞ。
Keep telling yourself that, Bon.
バンちゃん、
Bon.
寝言は寝てか
Don't
ら
be
言いなさい。
ridiculous.
冗
It
談
was a joke, okay?
私も
I
実はその
actually don't know
どうして流
why
行ってい
they're
るのか
popular
よ
myself.
くわからないんです。
Because ghetto froggy. I don't know.
あら、
No,
結構可
I
愛い
think
と
they're
思うけど
cute though.
ね。
ももちゃんの見る目
I'm
も
going
衰え
blind
た
in
な
your old age, Momo.
セロンは私の
The
方が
rest
正
of
しいって証
Japan
明してる
agrees
じゃ
with
ない。
me though.
バンちゃんも買いに行った
You
方がい
should
い
go
わ
buy
よ。
one for yourself.
一体どこへ行
Where
けば
could
買え
you
るもの
even
なんだ？
get them?
え
Oh,
ゲロカ
there
エ
are
ルン
ghetto
の
froggy
専門ショップ
stores
があち
everywhere.
こちにあって。
専門ショ
Ghetto
ップだ。
froggy stores?
そこで金
If you
曜日
go
に
there
行
on Friday
列
and
に並
stand
べ
in
ば
line,
買え
you
ると
could
思い
probably
ます。
get one.
金曜日。
Friday.
毎週金曜日に
They
新
always
しいデ
release
ザイン
new
のものが
designs on
発売になるん
Fridays.
です。
Girls who like them
好きな子
should
は
tend to
えっと
try to
コン
buy
プリ
them
ート
all.
とか言って全部集めてるみたいで。
Bon and Mimose had begun to glance at each other as Yua spoke. Bon was stroking his chin.
金曜。
Friday, huh?
流行るとは思えない。
It's something that shouldn't be popular suddenly becoming a huge hit.
G レートは
The
毎
G
週
rate
末
goes
に
up
上
every
昇する。
weekend.
まさかバンちゃん。
Don't tell me, Bon.
当たってみる
It's
価
worth
値はあ
looking
るかも
into.
な。
Not Ghetto Froggy being a suspect. No. When I went to school on Thursday, I got an unexpected offer from Misumi to go visit Ayase in the hospital. I hadn't thought of that at all, and it caught me off guard. But for some reason, before I could answer, Mimi had said she wanted to go. I ended up going along with them. Just to be clear, it's not that I was some cold person who didn't care about her. But with the threat of Shogun looming, I didn't have it in me to worry about other people. I didn't want to die. Misumi had gone in through the front door, but when he got to the lobby, he didn't seem sure what to do.
どうしたの？
What's wrong?
いや、
I just
岸
realized
本の
that I
病室
don't
っ
know what
て
room she's
ど
in.
こなんだろうなって思ってよ。
Well, had he come all this way without actually bothering to check? If so, what an idiot.
ここは外来
This is
棟
the
だよ。
outpatient wing.
病棟は
The
隣。
inpatient rooms are next door. Get
そうなのか。
really.
大ちん。
Daichin,
しっかりして
get
よ。
yourself together. NoAH Tokyo General Hospital. This is the hospital I'd come to ever since I was little. I'd just been here a while ago, in fact, so I had a pretty good idea of the basic layout. Suddenly, I remember what happened to Dr. Takashina, and let out a small moan that the others didn't hear. As Misumi headed for the inpatient rooms, I looked behind me.
で、病
So,
棟の
what do you
暗号室
think
だ
our
と思
room
う。
number is?
そんなの
I
わか
don't
んない
know.
よ。
This is a general hospital, with any number of departments in it, I would
た
guess.
多分
Maybe
外科じゃないかな。
surgery?
でも
Oh,
もしかすると精
Maybe
神
the
科かも。
mental ward. When she'd fallen, she hadn't looked like she was that badly injured. And if she was in bad enough shape mentally to try and jump off a building, it's entirely possible they put her there. It happened to me after that incident at O for some reason.
タクって物知りだな。
You're pretty smart.
常識でしょ
Everybody
常
knows
識
this. Everybody, right, Taku? Maybe not everybody. I wouldn't have known unless I'd been there so many times. Rumi stopped just before we got to the inpatient area.
私お手
I'm
洗い
gonna
行って
go
くる
use the restroom.
先
You
に行っ
guys
てて
go on ahead of me. She waved and headed back toward the outpatient wing. Assuming I figured that we'd bother the other patients if we wandered around. So we decided to ask about a yase at the nurse's station. Just like I thought. They gave us the number of a room in the psych ward. Oh boy, delusion time. The room was small and simple in layout. There was a bathroom on the right side of the entrance, and a bed near the back. The evening sun was pouring in through the window on the far wall. There was no sign of Ayase herself. The bed was unmade, so she must have been here a little bit ago.
どこ行ったんだ？
Where'd she go? I
さ
don't know. The window was open. The wind was blowing into the room, making the white curtains billow. I wandered over to the window. Thank you. I didn't go to look at anything. I didn't go to close the window. It was just a sudden urge, with no real reason behind it. I stood at the window and went to look up at the sky. Then I saw a shadow. Something fell down silently from above. And for a second, my eyes met with its own. The shadow disappeared. I heard the loud sound of something smashing into something below.
なんだ？
What? I clasped where I stood. My body started to shake violently. I realized what it was I had just seen. Ayase Kishimoto. She'd fallen from above and then hit the ground. If I looked out the window, I'd see her there, covered in blood, rain splattered all over the pavement. Just before she died, her eyes had met. I was the last person to see her. I was the last person she saw while she was alive. An awful scream poured from my mouth as I put my hands to my head in terror. Oh yeah, we're having a delusion.
見ろよタク。
Look,
変な本
Taku,
があるぞ。
there's a weird book here. I looked up in shock when Misumi said my name. I was standing in the corner of the room, nowhere near the window. I ran over to the window and looked out. Ayase was nowhere to be seen below me. Phew, it was just a delusion. I almost collapsed where I stood, but managed to grab onto the windowsill. He'd taken a book off the shelf and was reading it.
ヌーだぜ。
Check it out. It's a copy of New.
この雑誌。
I didn't even
Wow,
know this
that's
thing was
amazing.
still running. New was a magazine that dealt with UFOs, aliens, psychic powers, religions, urban legends, strange phenomena, ancient civilizations, and lost technology. Anything even tangentially related to the occult. It didn't surprise me in the least that a girl who constantly talked about crazy stuff like Ayase was reading it.
こっちの文庫本
And this
は。
paperback here,
何々
the apocalyptic
グ
psalms
ラ
of
ジオ
the
ルキ
Book of
黙示
Gladio.
録詩編
Looks like a fantasy novel.
ファンタジー小説っぽいな。
I never heard of the book, but I had heard of the word Gladio somewhere before. Where was it again? It felt like it had been really recently.
岸本と
If
付
we're
き合
gonna
うとな
take
ると、
Kishimoto,
この趣
I'll
味に
have
合
to
わせな
put
い
up
とい
with
け
her
ないの
hobbies
か。
too, huh? That'll be rough.
大変そうだぜ、これは。
Was he still planning on dating Ayase somehow? Last time she'd shot him down hard.
あ
Suddenly, I realized Ayase's D-sword was leaning up against the wall. Its shape reminded me of a space battleship you might see in a sci-fi movie. Every time I saw it, I was struck by how cool it looked, and the way it combined beauty and cruelty. It wasn't glowing right now, it was just sitting there, but still, you could feel its heavy presence. Yasumi showed no indication that he saw the sword. I guess normal people really couldn't see them. Maybe if I just took it without telling Yase, it would be mine then, right? If I could get a D-sword that easily, all my problems would be solved, right? I gulped and reached out for the weapon with a trembling hand. I went to grab the blade. I thought I grabbed it, but my hand passed right through it. I grabbed only thin air. I tried again, but the same thing happened. I couldn't take it. I couldn't even touch it. Was the sword not real booted right now? Since there was no shared awareness of its existence, it was just a delusion of Ayase's. An illusion. A dream. An afterimage.
何やってんだ
What the hell are you doing? Yasumi was looking at me, confused. We waited another 10 minutes, but there was no sign of Ayase. Mimi, who'd supposedly just gone to the bathroom, was nowhere to be seen either. Where had she gone?
リミって
Did
こ
Rimi
の
know
病室
what
の場
room
所を
Ayase was
知っ
in?
てたか
あ、
We asked about the room at the nurse's station after splitting up with Rimi. She might be wandering around looking for us.
あいつバカだからな
Rimi's pretty dumb.
俺たちみ
She
たい
might
に
not think of
誰かに
asking
聞こ
somebody
うっ
like
て
we
発想
did.
がないのかもしんねえぞ
探しに。
Let's go look for her. I was nervous without her around. There was no way to know for sure if this hospital was safe. If Shogun was reading my mind, he'd know exactly where I was.
そうだな
Yeah,
待つ
I'm
のもあ
tired
れだ
of
し
waiting.
タク
And
もあ
you're
いつがいな
probably
いと
pretty
寂し
lonely
いだろう
without
か
her.
ななあ
Hey,
ぶっちゃけ
tell me the truth.
リミとは
What's the
どう
deal
なん
with you
だ
and Mimi?
え
Huh?
付き合ってんの
I'm
かって聞
asking
い
if
てんだ
she's your
よ
girlfriend.
お前
You
ら
two are spending an
最
awful
近
lot of
結
time
構
together,
いい感じじゃ
right?
ね
付き合って
We're not
ないよ。
Dating. As I spoke, my face flushed. Me and Rimi dating. I had some delusions about the idea, sure. But I wasn't into 3D girls. I wasn't into 3D girls, but Rimi was a pretty big part of my life now. But when Rimi had offered to stay by my side, she also said this.
そんなの友
Because
達だからに
we're
決まっ
friends,
てるでし
right?
ょ
In other words, she saw me as a friend. She'd have no interest in dating a creepy otaku like me, obviously. But Rimi didn't seem like the type you'd want to date anyway. Yasumi and I decided to split up and look for her. Yasumi checked the floor below, so I went to check the one above us. Ami, where are you? Ami. I passed by an elderly man in his 50s. He was clearly a patient here. He was slowly staggering down the hallway, calling out for Ami, whoever that was. I ignored him and kept walking. Walking around the hospital didn't really bother me as much as I thought it would. It's probably because I've been here so many times. Still, the thought that Shogun might appear from behind every corner or open the door made my heart ache. Heart race, rather. There were those strange screams I sometimes heard too. They were bad for my heart. The walls and floor of the hallway were all the same off-white color. Some doors were open and some weren't. I peeked inside a few of them to see if Shogun was lurking there. Each room had 2 beds, and I couldn't see human-shaped forms beneath the sheets. Those must have been patients sleeping. Oh, and I could see. But for some reason, all of them were turned away from me, and I couldn't see their faces. There weren't many people out in the hallway. There'd been an old man calling for Ami, and then a nurse. They'd been the only 2 I'd seen. I didn't want to stay here for too much longer. I wasn't sure why, but that's how it felt. The air felt heavy. It wasn't unpleasant, but I felt like I didn't belong here. Bleh. As I kept going forward, I saw that the hallway turned to the right. And there must be more rooms down there, I thought, as I nervously rounded the corner. Huh. I saw a wall right in front of me. Unlike the off-white of the other walls, this one was painted pure black. For some reason, my heart began to race faster and faster. I couldn't move. My vision began to swim. I thought I was just feeling dizzy and closed my eyes, but when I put my fingers on my eyelids, I could feel my eyes twitching beneath them. A cold feeling, like ice, worked its way up my body from below. I stood there, completely still, forgetting to breathe. I stared at the black in front of me. It felt like I was pulling me, drawing me in. An endless black that continued on for eternity. There was nothing there, but somebody was watching me. I could feel the gaze of God stabbing into the back of my neck. It was far, far worse than had ever been at the base. Don't look at me. I used every scrap of my mental power I had to force my eyes closed. Only then I could breathe. Me too. I stepped back. I lowered my head, turned around, and ran. I headed back to the floor Yase's room was on as fast as I could, stopping to catch my breath only after I headed down the stairs. I touched my neck and found it was covered with a thick, sticky layer of sweat. It wasn't just my neck. My whole body was soaked. What the hell was that? Was the Shogun reading my mind? I could still sense the gaze of God. It was still hard to breathe. I was still cold. I felt exhausted. I wanted to go home. I wanted to have Reading Me take me back to the base, and I could stay there and never leave it again. Even if I did manage to find Ayase, she'd be annoyed, not happy to see me. Yasumi was only here because he was trying to get laid. I was an idiot to play along with it. I should just go home. Before Shogun and Yua show up. Those two could appear anywhere at any time. They'd be able to find me easily. I couldn't relax anywhere. I headed back to Yase's room. I was staggering, barely able to walk. I had to put my hand on the wall for support. Was Misumi back, I wondered? I slowly kept moving forward, praying that he'd manage to find Mimi.
Yamai-sanがまた
Mr. Yamai
みー
was
ちゃんって
calling
いう名
out
前
for
を呼んで
Ami
たんですよ
again. I could hear the voices of the nurses in front of me. I looked up to see two nurses walking toward me. One was young, the other was a plump older woman.
一体誰のことを探
Who's
して
he
るの
looking
か
for, do you think?
それこの
There's
病
an
院に
old
伝わ
ghost
る
story
怪談
about
よ
this hospital.
誰も知らない
There's a
幻の
room
病
here
室
that
があっ
nobody
て
can find.
そこに
It
アミー
belongs
ちゃん
to
が
a
入院
patient
してる
named
らしい
Ami.
わもう何年も
The
前
rumor's
か
been
らある
around for
噂
years. I put my head down and waited for the two of them to pass. I held my breath so they couldn't hear how much trouble I was having breathing. I could tell they were looking at me suspiciously, but all I could do was try to ignore them. When they were gone, I started to walk again. Somehow I managed to make it back to the nurse's station. Yase's room was in front of the nurse's station. I must have passed it. I groaned and wiped the sweat off my forehead. It still felt like somebody was watching me. I could feel a piercing sensation in my chest. My ears were ringing too. I felt awful. It seemed like I might pass out at any moment. I'd been just fine when I got here. What had happened to me? I was in so much pain. I just couldn't take it. I decided to get help from one of the nurses at the nurse's station. But there's only one person there. Evidently, she hadn't noticed me. She had her back turned and was muttering something as she worked. There was a clipboard in her hand. She was writing something on the paper it held. No. I met her before. It was Hazuki, the nurse. That's right. This is the mental ward at IH Tokyo General Hospital. Of course she'd be here. I talked to her twice in just the last month. Perfect. If she saw me, she'd help me out immediately. Just then, I heard a beeping noise. It sounded important. Husky put down her clipboard and flipped a switch in front of her. The beeping noise stopped. Evidently, someone had hit the button to call a nurse. She quickly ran out of the nurse's station. She seemed not to notice me. I was suffering so much. Just a few feet away from her, and she didn't even see me. I couldn't stand. The vertigo was incredible. Helplessly, I went inside the nurse's station and decided to wait for her to come back. I found the stool she'd been sitting on and sat down on it. My head hurt so bad. It was like the earthquake a week ago. But the pain was different, somehow. Maybe. I wanted something to drink. I've been out of breath for so long that even breathing hurt. I took a quick glance around me. I saw the clipboard Hazuki had been writing on. I could see what was drawn on it. Huh? Last time I'd seen her, she'd been smiling as she'd written something on it. I thought she was taking down my temperature, or the names of the drugs I should be given. Huh? So, what was this? I couldn't understand. Isn't this... I'd seen it somewhere before. I'd seen this terrible drawing somewhere before. Where? Where had I seen it? My head hurt so bad. The stabbing pain. The prickling in the back of my neck. Don't look at me. I picked up the clipboard. There were several papers there, all medical charts. I flipped through them. The second one had the same terrible picture. I flipped to the next. The third one was the same. The fourth two, and the fifth, and the sixth. They all had the same picture on them. This picture. I was crucified. Hello, Autumn. Thank you for the posture check. I'll stretch a little bit too while I'm at it. How's it going, though? How are you? Oh. Thank you for the contribution. You guys are now 25% of the way through. And there's 7 days left. I'll increase. You came right at the moment this crucifixion. It's the name of the murder case at the beginning of the game. It's very exciting. Thank you for your contribution as well, Peachy. And the seventh was... Sonome Darinome. You're doing okay? Figured to pop in before you head to bed since it's 1 a.m. or yeah. Definitely go get some sleeps, and thank you so much for popping in. I do appreciate it. But do rest. Take care of yourself. Important stuff. The shipping crate that Takumi Nishijo called home was perched silently on the roof of an old building in Shinsan. Senna Aoi was coming here now for the second time. The first had been a few days prior, when she ran into Takumi and caused away at Center Street. She secretly followed him home. That's how she found this place. That's nice. Senna, we shouldn't be doing this. Kosupi doesn't want to be a thief. Kumio. Then why did you come? Senna spoke coldly, without even looking back at Kozue. Senna had come here to sneak into Takumi's room. Takumi Nishijo wasn't normal. After talking to him several times, that was the conclusion she'd reached. He was different from normal gigolomaniacs like Senna and Kozue. Either the strength of his delusions was incredibly intense, or he was receiving some kind of artificial support. Either way, his existence seemed like it was unstable. Somehow. Something about him bothered Senna a lot. She was looking for a man named Hatano. And it was possible that Takumi Nishijo was connected to him somehow. She had no way of being sure. But if there was any chance, even a small one, she wouldn't rest until she ruled it out with her own eyes. As long as she kept doing that, she'd find her target eventually. That's what Senna believed. There was the padlock on the door. Senna gave a little snort and brought down her D-sword. She'd already real-booted it. The padlock shattered easily. If Takumi comes back, he'll get mad at you. Senna had already seen that Takumi had left school with 2 friends, heading in the direction of the station. This background art is so pretty, yeah. The game is pretty. And even if he did find out and she didn't care, Senna would do anything to achieve her goal, even if that meant making somebody mad or even having them call the cops. She opened the door and went inside. The place was like a garbage dump. Senna couldn't help but wince and give a small moan. It's so filthy, huh? You seem like you're having fun, Kozue. Should I take my shoes off? Senna sighed and went inside the room without bothering to remove her shoes. There are lots of dolls, Nora. Whoopoo. I guess Takumi's a big pervert. Wow. Sugoi na. Senna ignored Kozue, who seemed strangely impressed for some reason, and went over to the computer. She turned on Takumi's PC. While she waited for it to boot up, she ran her eyes across the contents of the desk. Her eyes narrowed as she picked up an old sheet of essay paper. Ah. Hey! 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 It's whose eyes are those? Kozue had been looking over Senna's shoulder. She was jumping up and down with delight. I knew it! Takumi was the whose eyes are those guy. Kozupi was right. Pan paka pan pon. Senna, however, seemed much less interested in the essay than Kozue. She flipped it over to see if anything was written on the other side. Suddenly, her eyes went wide with shock. This is... What she saw there was... Yupi? There were lots of people. And is this a robot? It says IR too. Senna? Senna was gritting her teeth so loud that you could physically hear it. Her expression was even angrier than usual, and her hands shook with rage as she held the essay. So that's it. Nishijo's the one who created IR2. Her voice was quiet. Senna crumbled up the essay into a ball and crushed it with her fist. Yep. I'll be right back. Hang on, guys. Hello, I'm back. I got up and left the nurse station, and I was wandering around the hospital. My brain still felt like it was full of fog. I decided not to think about what I'd just seen. Somehow, I ended up at the stairwell. Misumi was there, standing in front of the window.
どうしたタク？
What's wrong, Tucker?
汗びっしょり
You're
じゃねえ
soaked with
か。
sweat.
顔色も悪
You
いし。
look like crap too.
顔
No,
色悪いの
I
はい
guess
つ
you
も
always look like crap.
もしかして。
Were you
走って
running
探
around
してたの
looking
か？
for the two of them?
そりゃ
I
バ
guess
カ
that'd
も
get
する
you
ぜ。
run out of breath.
無茶す
You're
るね。
kind of crazy
お前って。
sometimes, you know? I wiped away the sweat and tried my best to pretend I was okay.
リミと岸本。
I found Rimi
見つけ
and
たぜ。
Kishimoto. But I couldn't see the two of them anywhere, then, for some reason. He pointed out the window.
あそこだ。
There. It took a moment to catch my breath before walking over to the window. From the window, I could see the outpatient building next to us. The outpatient and inpatient areas were separate buildings. There was a walkway that led between them, but the two were a distance apart. The inpatient building was a few stories taller, and from the stairwell, you could just look down on the outpatient building's roof. There was a garden there, with a planter filled with red flowers. It was a space for patients to relax. Rimi and Ayase were facing in the middle of the garden, or standing in the middle of the garden, facing each other. Ayase was wearing her pajamas. They seemed to be discussing something. The two of them didn't know each other, right?
なんか妙
Is
に
it
シ
just
リ
me,
アス
or
に
does
見
it
えね
feel
え
like they're
か。
talking about something serious?
Oh.
Yeah. They seemed to be glaring at one another. Suddenly, Ayase took a step forward and slapped Rimi across the face. Even from here, I could see that she'd given it her full strength. Now Ayase was walking away from Mimi. If she was heading toward the connecting corridor, she might come back to her room.
今
She
ビンタ
just
した
slapped her, right?
よな。
I nodded. Mimi was standing there, alone. She wasn't moving.
あの二人って
Are those two mad at each other over something? Maybe. I hadn't heard anything like that at all. Misumi suggested that we pretend we'd never seen it. I eagerly agreed. We decided to leave Rimi where she was and head to Ayase's room. I was feeling a lot better than I had a bit ago. The gaze of God was gone. That awful feeling had disappeared like it had never happened.
Oh.
No. Misumi let out a soft gasp. He was walking ahead of me. I looked up and saw Ayase heading towards us. She was looking down at her feet. She seemed sick and pale, and was having trouble walking. Her expression seemed dark too. We ended up running into each other right in front of her hospital room.
よ岸本
Hey,
さん。
Kishimoto. Ayase looked up in surprise at his cheerful greeting. And when she saw me, she gave me a smile that somehow made it look like she was about to cry. Why was she smiling just now? Because she'd heard about the mess at Wolfront and how much of a fool I'd made of myself? Or did she just like me? If it was the former, that was incredibly depressing.
俺たち君のお見舞
We
いに来
came
たん
to
だよ
pay you a
ね。
visit.
つうか岸本さん。
Wow.
パジャ
You're
マ
cute in your
姿も可愛いじ
pajamas.
ゃん。
He was already using his pickup artist skills. Talk about being fast on your feet.
入って
Come in. Ayase, for her part, wasn't nearly as cold as she'd been to him before. She opened the door and invited us in. She didn't mention the fact that she just slapped Rimi on the roof at all. I wasn't sure whether she was just hiding it, or if she'd just totally gotten over it in this short time. As always, it was impossible to tell what Ayase was thinking.
や
Taku,
っぱ見
you
舞いに来た
need
のは正
totally
解だ
right
った
to
ぜ。
come visit her.
今日は好
Today's a
感触だ
lucky。day. Misumi gave a little thumbs up, making sure Ayase didn't see. He was panting a little as he went into the room. I followed him. I wanted to go home with Rimi, but I didn't have the courage to talk to her right now. I don't know why it had happened, but if somebody had slapped her that hard, she must be feeling pretty bad, and I didn't have the words to make her feel better. Yase sat down on the bed. Misumi sat down next to her. Somehow managed to make it look natural in the process. I was astonished at his boldness. Seeing him go on the offensive was making me feel a little odd. Yase gave him a glance before fixing her gaze on me. As she stared at me, I didn't know what sort of look I should have on my face. In the end, I decided to look at my feet.
怪我どう
How are you feeling?
もうだいぶ
Looks
良く
like
な
you're
ってるみた
doing
いだけど
better.
なんか必要なものある
If
な
there's
ら遠慮
anything
なく
you
言って
need,
よ
tell me. I mean
俺
it.
がすぐ
I'll
買っ
go
てき
get
て
it
や
for
る
you
ぜ
right away. He was staring at her hand. Evidently, he was looking for a chance to grab it. Should I not be here?
あ
Oh,
小説と
do
か
you
読
read
む
books? I'm a
俺
big
さ
fan of
グ
the
ラジオール記
apocalyptic
黙示録
songs
詩
of
編
the
っての
Book
が
of
好きなんだけど
Gladio. You ever heard of it?
岸本さん知ってる
匠
Takumi. Yase ignored Misumi's question. Instead, she said my name.
君は
You're
グ
one
ラ
of
ジオールの
Gladio's
七騎士
seven
の一
knights.
人よ
Oh.
Eh?
Huh? There she goes again. Even after her failed suicide attempt, evidently Yase's personality hadn't changed.
やっぱり導きだったん
It
だ
was the great will that brought the two of
君
us
と私
together
が出会
after
ったの
all.
は
She spoke, softly, unemotionally. She began to share whatever crazy backstory she had in her head.
君の邪心は
Your wicked heart is
とても強大。
incredibly powerful,
だからこそ
and
言う
that's
こ
what
とな
makes
し
you
なのよ
perfect. The
黒騎
perfect
士と
Black
しての
Knight.
素質は君が今経
All the
験して
pain
い
you're
る苦しみは
experiencing right now is
すべ
divine
て神
punishment.
罰
A test
大いなる意
set
志
out
による
before
試
you
練
by
だ
the great will.
それを乗り越えた時に
When you overcome it,
理想度
the
は召
D-sword
喚
will be
されるわ
summoned. It will come to
君の
you,
手に必ずそして
and then
現れる
it
の
will appear.
邪心の黒き
And the
大
great
者
black serpent of the wicked
あらゆる
hearts,
崩壊を飲
that
み
which
込み
is the same,
邪
and yet
心王の
different,
身を砕
which
くことがで
swallows all
き
destruction, and can shatter the
Go
body of
extinct.
the king of wicked
異
hearts.
質なるものが現実なの
It's all real.
グラジオール
Gladio,
理想
the
度
D-swords.
かまいたちが
And the Kamitachi is
Sonakashi.
proof.
実在しない現象
If it
は
wasn't real,
後
the
世の
stories
言
about
葉
it
と
wouldn't
して
have been
残るこ
passed
とは
down
な
through
いわ
the ages.
知っている
Do you know what the
語
word
源は
Kamaitachi is a corruption of?
かまえたち
Kameitachi. It means the blade held ready.
それは理
It
想度を
refers
意
to
味
a
している
D-sword.
信じて
Believe,
匠
Takumi.
グラジオールを倒すの
Defeat
よ
Gladio together with
一緒に
me. Bad delusion time. Gladio. I remembered. I'd seen it when I first looked up the D-sword. From what I read, the legends of the D-sword originally came from old texts and apocrypha about the legend of Gladio. Supposedly, anyways. Misumi suddenly stood up and walked towards me. As he passed by me, he put his hand on my shoulder.
俺もうついていけねえ
Oh,
や
this is too much for me.
あとは任せた
You can have her. I allowed an annoyed sigh and went to leave the room.
待って
Wait. Yes, I finally spoke to him for the first time, but for some reason, there was a stern look on her face.
逃がさないわよ
I won't let you go.
あ
Huh?
何
What,
何
you're actually
俺
going
の
to
相手し
talk
てく
to
れん
me?
の
ええ
Yes.
そうね
Yes, indeed.
あなたが邪神王の
I
使
know
い
you're
だ
a
という
servant
こ
of
とは
the king of the
分か
wicked
っている
hearts. What? Was this some new part of her fantasy? Nisumi looked really annoyed to be forced to play a role in whatever was going on in her head. Most people would be. Even as a joke, it wasn't funny at all. But Ayase was, it seemed, dead serious.
匠
Takumi. Ayase said my name. Helen tossed me a small paring knife. She must have been hiding it beneath the sheets. Confused, I fumbled and grabbed it. There was a cover on it, thankfully, or I would have cut myself badly.
そいつを
Kill him.
殺すのよ。
But... him. As she spoke, her gaze was locked on Misumi. What the hell was going on here? I held the knife in my hand, with no idea what to do.
おいおい
Come on now.
殺せときたか
Kill me?
いく
I
ら
was
なんで
going a
も
little far,
それ
isn't
は
it?
ひどくねまあ
I
仕
mean,
事に嫌わ
I
れて
know
る
you
の
don't
は分かっ
really
てた
like
けど
me. I didn't think you'd
まさ
say
か
something
面と
like
向か
that
っ
right
て
to my
そんなこと
face.
言われるとは思わなかったぜそれで
So,
な
what
んだっ
was
け
this all about again?
グラビトーン
Gratitron?
邪神
Wicked hats?
何のことだか
I don't know
俺には
what
さっ
the
ぱり
hell
わか
you're
んねえんだ
talking
けど
about.
なたく
Daku,
とりあえ
just
ず
put the
ナイフ
knife
を置けよ
down. You don't need to play
仕事の
along with
妄想
your
に付き合うな
delusions.
妄想じゃないわ。
It's not a delusion.
匠、
Takumi,
そいつの言葉を
don't
信
believe
じない
him.
で。
Misumi took a step away from Ayase, his lips pressed tight with fear.
お前
You-
異常
You're
だぜ
crazy.
匠、
Takumi,
早く殺すの
kill
よ。
him. Now.
でないとグラジオー
The
ルに
Gladio will
君の存在
find
が筒抜
you.
けになってしまうわ。
I quietly gave the knife back to Ayase.
匠、
Takumi.
君の言ってることは
What you're saying is
めちゃく
crazy.
ちゃだよ
She looked up at me with sorrow in her eyes. Don't look at me with those eyes. I can't kill Misumi. All the stuff about Gladio didn't matter. If I killed somebody, I'd be a criminal. There's no way I was gonna let that happen. That was all.
さすが親
Of
友
course. Your
お前な
best
ら
friend.
俺を
I
選
knew
ぶって
you'd
信じ
choose
てた
me.
ぜタク
Taku. Misumi patted me on the shoulder. Gaze. And subtly. Very subtly. His hand went for the knife on Ayase's lap.
じゃあな
Bye.
電波
Crazy
女
bitch. In a single smooth movement, he grabbed it, slid off the cover, and swung it. Blood spurted out from Ayase's neck. I could feel its heat as it fell on my face. Ayase's eyes were wide with shock, staring at me. She slowly fell backward onto the bed. The white sheets began to turn red with blood.
やっちまったな
Well,
タク
now you've done it, Taku.
今のが最後
And
の
that
チャン
was
スだ
your
った
last chance. Your last chance to stop Gladio's revival. That's not a paring knife. I couldn't even scream.
正しかったのは
Kishimoto was right
岸本
about
の
me,
方
you
だった
know.
ってわけだ
As he spoke, he climbed on top of Ayase. He dug the knife into her eye socket and ripped out her eye without the slightest hesitation. Her body didn't move at all, even as the knife went in. He glanced at me, smiling cruelly.
その目誰の目
Whose eyes are those? I came back to my senses. Ayase wasn't covered in blood. She was just sitting on the bed. Misumi was nowhere to be found. Was that a delusion? I let out a deep sigh. What an awful delusion. Feeling guilty, I apologized to Ayase in my mind. Ayase, for her part, was still rambling. She hadn't noticed anything at all.
すべてはお告げよ。
All this is a message.
すでに
All seven should have gathered in Shibuya by now. The
7
seven
の黒
Black
騎士よ。
Knights.
あとは
Now all that's left is for
全員
them
の覚醒す
to
るだけ。
awaken.
急がないと
If you don't
世
hurry,
界は
the world
滅
will
びる
be
わ。
destroyed.
グラジオールの手に
Destroyed
よ
at
って
the hands of Gladio. Is there... What? Or support Val. Let's see. Takumi, Kozuki, Rimi definitely has one, even if it hasn't been confirmed. Senna, Fess. Who are the other two? Well, I guess Yua and Shogun? Is that it? I don't know. Yusumi and I both looked at each other and shrugged as we walked down to the first floor.
俺もう
I'm
岸本のことは
totally
ど
over
うでもよくなっ
Kishimoto.
た
Yeah?
これまでの俺のポリシー
Until
は
now,
なタク
I've had a rule, Otaku.
可愛ければ
And she's cute.
何
I'll
で
put
も
up
許
with
してやる
anything.
だったけどそりゃ間違って
But
た
that
よ
was wrong. She's too nuts for
強烈
me.
なテンパ俺には受け止めらんねえよ素直に
I'll just focus my attention on
Kozoe-chan
Kozoe, I guess. I wasn't sure that was a good idea either. Yusumi already had a girlfriend after all.
お前マジで
You
すご
really
いな
got my respect though.
岸本のあの脳みそを
You
お花
managed to
畑
listen to
の話
Kishimoto's crazy talk for almost half an
30分近く
hour.
聞いてられるよ
I'm in awe.
俺尊敬したぜ俺は3分
I
も
couldn't
持たなかった
handle 3 minutes of it.
この
Me
俺
of
から
all
ぞ
people. Okay. Little kamoji. I kept an eye on my surroundings as I walked, only occasionally responding to some comment Misumi made. When we got to the outpatient building lobby, I could see Rimi standing there, looking a little spaced out. Cold wind was rustling through her hair, and I could see she lacked her usual cheerful demeanor. She was looking up at the night sky as if some big problem was on her mind.
おーい
Hey,
Rimi!
Rimi! When Misumi said her name, she turned to us with a sudden bright smile on her face and waved energetically at us. I finally found you! Seeing her smile made me feel relieved. I found myself running up to her. Of course, I couldn't hug her or anything like that, so running up to her was all I did. I'm happy to see you again.
また会えて嬉しい。
どこほっつき歩い
Where
てたん
have you
だ
been?
病室
I
どこ
didn't
か
know
わ
which
から
room
なく
she
て
was in.
あちこ
I
ち
was
さまよ
looking
っち
all
ゃっ
over
た。
for it.
ひどいよ。
How could you guys just leave me
置い
like
てくなん
that?
て。
That's so mean. She gave us a show of fake crying.
お前が先に行けっ
You're
て
the
言っ
one
たん
who
だ
told us to go on without you.
そうだったね。
That's right, isn't it?
で、岸
So,
本さんには
did you
会え
find
た？
Kishimoto? I nodded. Misumi was behind me. I could tell he was grinning.
お前
Kishimoto
岸本にビン
slapped
タ
you,
されてた
didn't
ぞ
she? Huh?
さ
I don't know what
何
you're
の
talking
ことでしょ
about.
う。
Evidently, Mimi had wanted to keep the fact that Ayase had slapped her a secret. I hadn't intended to bring it up. Misumi, read the room.
隠そうったって無駄だ
No
ぜ
sense in hiding it.
俺は一
I
日
saw
中
the whole
見てた
thing.
もう
Every
家
second
政
of
婦の
it.
ようにな
Oh,
なんだ、
he saw it.
バレてたのか。
She gave us an awkward look, and then stared up into my eyes.
もしかして、
Did you see it
Takumi
too,
見てたの？
Taku?
そうだ
That's
俺
right.
とタクで
Taku and I
決
got
定
a
的
good
瞬
look
間を
right,
バ
but
ッ
it
チリ見てた
happened. Don't tell her that. Oh boy, time for another delusion.
なんだ、
Aw,
そ
I
れじゃ
look like an idiot
必死
for
にごまか
trying
そうとして
to
たのが
hide it.
バカみたいじゃない。屋上に行ったら、
I had
ちょう
gone
ど
up to
岸
the
本さん
roof
がいた
and
から
she was there.
つい
Asked her a
気に
question
なっ
I've
てた
been
ことを
wondering
質問しちゃった
about.
の。そしたら、
And I guess
機嫌損
she
ねた
got
みたい。
mad. A question.
なんだよ気になってた
What
ことって
question?
ね、 あなたは
I said,
もうずっと
you've
こ
been
の
in
病
this
院に
hospital
入
the
院し
whole
てたんで
time,
しょって
haven't you?
どういう意味だそれ。
What do you mean?
あのね、 岸本さんは
Kishimoto never
退
left the
院なんてして
hospital.
なかったの。
Amy seemed a little proud as she shared this information with us.
たまにしか学校
The
に来
reason
なかった
she
の
only
も
came
この病
to
院から
school
無断で通
once
って
in
た
a
から。
while was that she actually wasn't supposed to be coming at all. She was slipping out of the hospital to do it. The same with her concerts.
そして
And
ニュージェ
also,
ネ事件
New Gen
は
was actually a
岸本
delusion
さん
she
の生み
came
出し
up
た妄
with,
想を
but she
彼女
made
自身
real
の
by
手で
doing the
実行
murders
したものだっ
herself.
たの。ファンタズムの歌詞
She
の
did
通
them
りに
exactly the way
事件
they
を起こし
described
た
in
のに
Phantasm's lyrics.
それによって
She wanted to
注
get
目を
more
浴び
attention
るた
for
め
her
に
band.
それが私
That
の
was
推
my
理した
solution
ニュ
to
ージ
the
ェ
New
ネ事件
Gen
の
mystery.
真相。
I
さっ
decided
き
to share it
思い
with
切って岸本さ
Kishimoto
ん本
herself.
人にぶつけてみたんだ。そしたら
And
叩かれ
then
ちゃった。
she slapped me. That's not funny. Anybody get mad if you accuse them of being a murderer with no evidence? No, but wait. Mimi hadn't gotten mad when I accused her of being the New Gen killer.
でも
But
私の
I'm
推理
sure
は
my
間違
theory
っ
is
てない
right,
はず。
though.
タク
Taku, you
気
need
を
to
つ
be
けてね。
careful.
岸本さんは
Kishimoto
異常だよ。
is crazy. I couldn't believe Rumi would say such a thing. I thought I misheard it.
私は正常
No,
よ。
totally normal.
え
Huh? I heard a clear voice call out. I looked and saw Yase standing at the entrance to the building, holding her D-sword.
すべては
And the
大
great
いな
Will
る意
guide
志の
Saul.
導き。
She screamed, running at us with the blade.
おい
Hey, let's get out of here.
タク、
Taku,
どうしよ
what did we do?
どうしようって
Don't ask me.
う。グラジオールに
Glory to
Eh,
Gladiel. There's Chloe sitting around with Yase. She was heading closer and closer to us. Crap, I needed to run. I needed to run or she'd kill me. I was so panicked that I stumbled as I turned to flee. I landed face first on the ground. Taku!
諦めろリミ
Forget him, Mimi! The two of them fled, leaving me behind. I reached out toward them as they got smaller and smaller in my vision.
待って置いて
Wait,
いかないで
don't leave me!
死ね
Die! I turned around just in time to see Yase standing above me, holding the D-sword high above her head. Hey, Taku. Earth to Taku. Let's go. Yusumi was calling me. Mimi was standing next to him, waving. I blinked to look around me. There was no sign of Ayase. It wasn't hurt. It hadn't been stabbed. Ew. It was a delusion. I thought she'd killed me. I never wanted to see Ayase like that in real life.
タク
Taku, hurry up! I quickly chased after them. The three of us walked side by side throughout the outpatient lobby, reading. This part of the hospital had evidently closed for the day, because there were only a few people there. There were, however, around 10 people gathered around the big LCD TV in the corner.
何かな。
What's going on, I wonder?
また新し
Another
いニュ
new
ージェン
gen
でも
murder,
起きたんじゃ
maybe?
ね
Misumi whispered. I froze, but Rimi. She quietly gripped my hand. The warm feeling kept me from being any more scared. I could feel the tension in my heart melt away. Rimi was my support. Rimi gave me safety. Rimi would stay with me. Maybe I was being a little too optimistic, but having her by my side kept the terror just barely manageable. I was so glad she was here.
なあ
Hey,
二人とも来て
guys,
みろよ
come here. Yasumi had gone over to the TV and was beckoning to the two of us. The others, patients young and old, and even the nurses were all glued to the screen. What was going on?
行ってみよう。
Let's go see. Remy pulled me by my hand until we were close enough to see the TV. Nervously, I looked at it. And when I saw what the text on the screen said, I was stunned. Oh. It was news about the arrest of the new Gen killer.
繰り返しお伝えしま
Let
す。
me repeat.
今日午後3時半
As
ご
of
ろ、
3:30
警視
p.m.,
庁
the
渋谷署
Shibuya
はいわ
Metropolitan
ゆる
Police
ニュー
announced
ジェ
the
ネレー
arrest
ショ
of
ン
a
の狂気
suspect
と
in
呼ば
one
れ
of the
る
so-called
渋
new
谷で発生
generation
した一
madness
連の殺人事
killings.
件のうち、9月29日に起きた
Specifically, the
通称
crucified
貼り
murder,
付け殺人
which
事件の
occurred
容
on
疑者を
September
逮捕しまし
29th.
た。殺人容疑で逮
The
捕された
suspect
の
is
は
an
無職
unemployed man
狛枝慎
named
吾容
Shingo
疑者
Komaeda,
25歳です。
age 25. Komaeda, no.
容疑については先
According
ほ
to
ど
the
渋谷署で
announcement
行わ
by
れ
the
た記者
Shibuya
会見の
police,
通り、
as of now, he
今の
has
とこ
only
ろ
been arrested
太
for
田
the
久志さ
murder
ん
of
殺害につい
Hisashi
てのみ
Ota.
で、他の事件に関する容疑
They are
は
currently
今後追
investigating
及して
his
いく構
connection
え
to
です。
the other cases.
狛枝容疑者は
The
太
suspect
田
has
さん
admitted
殺害に
guilt
つい
in
て
the
は容疑
murder
を
of
認め、
Ota.
交際している女性が
According to his
太田さん
statement,
にしつ
Ota
こく
was
つけ
stalking
回
his
され、
girlfriend,
カッとなっ
and
て
he
首を
strangled
絞
him
め
in a
た。
rage.
しかし
However,
ゾン
Ota
ビだった
was,
ため死
to
な
quote
ず
the
貼り
suspect,
付けにし
a
て動き
zombie,
を止め
and
た。
so he had to stick him to a wall to make him stop moving. A human being who's come back to life as a corpse. The original personality is gone, and while their movements are slow, they're violent and attack other human beings. I can read is so good. One theory says that the zombies were originally people put into a coma with zombie powder, a dust made from tetrodotoxin, and wrongly buried alive. While underground, the lack of oxygen caused brain damage, leading to what we would now call a zombie-like state.
などと意
He
味
made
不明
this,
の供
as
述
well
を
as
してい
several
ます。
other bizarre comments.
警察の調べでは、
The police
狛枝容疑者
investigation
には
showed that the
現在交
suspect
際して
does
いる
not,
女性がい
at
な
this
いこ
time,
とが
have a
明らかになっ
girlfriend.
ており、
They're
薬
investigating to
物
see
を
if
摂
the
取して
drugs
いた
were
疑いも
involved.
あるとみて捜査を進めています。
I couldn't believe it. The TV was showing recorded footage of the suspect being taken away by car. There were media everywhere. The light from the camera bulbs making the screen flash. There was a jacket over the man's head. I couldn't see what he looked like at all.
タク、
Taku. Mimi's hand gripped mine tighter. She whispered to me as she looked at the screen.
やっぱりタクは
See?
犯人な
They
ん
weren't
じゃ
the
なかっ
killer
たし、
after all.
将軍っていう人も
I'm sure the Shogun
単な
guy
るい
is
た
just
ずらだっ
playing
た
a
んだ。
prank on you.
楠木さんだって
And
間違
Kusunoki
った
was just
推理
wrong.
をしてただけ。
That's all.
ね、
See?
これで何
Now
も
it's
かも
all
解
over.
決。もう見え
You
ない
don't
影
need
な
to
んか
be
見
afraid
える
of
こと
shadows
ないんだよ。
anymore. That's right. If they arrested somebody else for the crucified murder, then that meant I couldn't have been the one to do it. I wasn't a sleepwalker, and I didn't have multiple personalities. This proved I was completely normal. And at the same time, it proved that I hadn't seen me covered in blood there either. It hadn't been real. It had just been a delusion of mine. It was over. The nightmare I'd been dealing with for the past month was over. I didn't need to be jumping at shadows anymore. I didn't need to be scared of the gaze of God. I didn't need to be frantically looking for the D sword. I didn't need to do any of that. So why? Why did something feel so wrong? The idea that Shogun had just been stalking me is so kind of pranked and it's incredible. Maybe I only thought that way because my sense of what was normal had been numbed for the past month. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It said on vibrate like I was supposed to, but I still couldn't take a phone call in a hospital. I let go of Amy's hand and headed out the front door. I answered the phone.
はい。
Hello? Who's
Dare.
there? I tensed up. Maybe it was the Torianse song again. I checked the name on the phone. But it was unlisted. I got a bad feeling I went to hang up, but... Brother... The voice on the other end was in terrible pain, but it was, without doubt, Nanami's voice.
何
Not to me.
何なの？
Give back
右手
my right hand. Well. Also, well. The Gator Froggy specialty shop was called the Todali Froggy. Someone, at some point, must have thought it was a funny pun, but all it could elicit from Bond was a tired sigh. There were 20 Totally Froggy stores all across the city, and they were supposedly building more. The one in Harajuku was the first one that had been built, and so it was a mecca for Ghetto Froggy fans. That was the one Bond had decided to visit, and he was quickly regretting it. Hey,
なあ
Yua,
ゆあちゃん
can I go home?
帰っていいか
He whispered to Yua, who had accompanied him to the store and showed him where it was.
え、
Huh?
でも
But
百
didn't
瀬さん
Momose
から
tell
ゲ
us
ロ
we
カエル
needed
も
to
買ってくる
buy
ように
Ghetto
頼まれてる
Froggy?
んじゃ。
だってよ
I mean,
おじさんだ
clearly
け
isn't a
明ら
place
か
for a
に
guy
似
my
てるからさ
age. It was right on Takashita Street, and there were countless young people walking outside, having fun and talking to each other. Most of them were completely ignoring the shop. Inside was small, and mostly devoid of people. There were only about 5 people there, including Bon and Yua, and all of them but Bon were teenage girls. A guy that looked like Bon walking down Takashita Street with a teenage girl like Yua probably seemed like he was buying sex. And now here he was, buying her the mascot character that all the kids loved. What a perfectly stereotypical old pervert he was. Bon felt depressed. And
なんか
it feels like
誰かに見られて
somebody's
るような
watching
気が
us.
するんだよな。いい年して
Maybe I'm
自意
just
識
getting
過剰かもしん
self-conscious in
ね
my
えな
old age.
あ、それ
Oh, me
私も
too.
です。最近
It
誰か
feels
の
like
視線を
somebody's
感じ
watching
て
me lately. I get really
たまに
scared.
すごく怖くなるんですよ。
なん
No,
俺だけじゃ
so
な
it's
かっ
not
た
just
か
me.
ゆあちゃんの
In
場合は
your case,
心
that's
配だ
pretty
な
worrying.
スト
If
ー
you
カ
got
ー
a
に付け狙わ
stalker.
れてたりしたら
そんな
Hey, hey,
怖いこ
don't
と言わ
scare
ない
me
でく
like
ださい。
that.
ねえ安心して
Don't worry.
そんな奴がいた
Even
ら
if you
俺
do,
が
I'll
逮捕し
arrest
てや
him
る
for you. Bon grinned, then turned to look at the Gato Froggy items on the shelf.
ところでゆあ
By
ちゃ
the
んは
way,
ここに来る
how
の
many
は
times have
何度
you
目だ
been here?
私も
This is my first
初め
time
てです
too.
あんまり客
It
が
doesn't
い
seem
ね
to
え
be
ようだな
that busy.
静か
I
な
guess
ブ
it's
ームってや
popular
つ
in
な
a
のか
really quiet way.
金曜日から
Supposedly
日
it
曜
gets
日に
really
かけて
busy
は
between
すごく
Friday and
混んでるらしい
Sunday.
です。あ、
Um,
つまりそ
I
の
mean,
新
just on
作
the
が発売され
weekends,
て
when a
週
new one
末
comes
の
out,
間だけですね。特に金曜日は
especially on
もの
Friday.
すごく並
They
ぶ
say
ら
the
し
lines
くて
are huge.
学生のために
And they open at
18時
6
に販
p.m.,
売開始
so
なんで
that
すけど
students can come.
噂だと
And I heard people
そ
say
の
the
行
line
列だけ
fills
で
up all
竹下通
of
りが埋め尽く
Takashita
され
Street
るとか。
週末だ
just on the
け
weekends, huh?
まあす
That's even
ます
more
怪しいな
suspicious. Bon decided to grab 2 of the last week's frog, teary-eyed Gato Froggy, and take them to the register. Yua seemed to have decided not to buy any for herself. She simply followed behind him.
射精
Yo! The clerk was a rather dim-looking 20-something man with his hair dyed green. He even had pierced ears. If he wasn't at the register, it would have been hard to believe he even worked in a store. He certainly didn't seem like the customer service type. The clerk was openly gawking at Yua and Bon.
娘さんへの
A
プレゼ
present
ント
for
って
your
やつか
daughter?
ええ
Yeah,
そうなんだよ
that's
ね
right.
ああこの子がどう
She
して
really
もって
wanted
言う
one.
からまあたま
And
に
you
は
know,
父
I
親
figured
ら
it
しいこ
wouldn't
と
kill
や
me
らん
to
と
act
ね
like a dad once in a while. Bon gave the clerk a friendly, awkward-looking grin. Yua had a surprised look on her face and quickly turned her head down, but Bon ignored her and continued to play the role of dad.
それより
So
この
anyway,
カエルに
I'm
興味あ
curious
るんだ
about
け
these
ど
frogs.
ちょっと
Can you tell me a
話
little
聞かせて
about
もらっ
them?
ていいかな。ゲコカエルンっ
Are there
て
gecko
そんな
frogs
に
that
人気あるの？
are these Greco frogs that popular?
っていうかゲロカエル
Ghetto, not
バンバ
gecko.
ン人気あ
They
って
come out and they
やばい
just
っす
fly off the shelves like bang bang.
ああ、ゲコ
Ah,
カエルン
yeah.
ね。
Gap
いつも
frog.
週
Got
末に
it.
新作が出る
Now
んで
the
し
new
ょ。
editions come out on the weekends.
ゲロカエルンだって
Dude,
言ってんじ
Ghetto
ゃんもうっ
froggy. Get it right.
ていうか
I'm like,
新作と
don't
か
call
そ
them
ういう
new
言い方マジやめ
editions.
てよ
We always
新
call
ガエ
them
ルだ
new
から
frogs.
金土日と
On
超
Friday,
並ん
Saturday,
で
and
バンバン
Sunday.
売れるん
They
で
go flying
マ
off
ジ
the
やばいっすよ
shelves. Seriously
マジでバンバン
crazy.
売れるっすか
They
ら
go off the shelves like bang bang.
バンバンっすよマジで
Seriously, bang bang. Eva suddenly narrowed her eyes. Something in the way he was saying bang so many times felt strange. Why did he keep emphasizing it? It probably wasn't deliberate, but it felt like he was using it as an excuse to say Bond's name over and over again, and in a really rude way, too.
これメイド
Or
イン
they
チャ
say
イナってラ
made
ベ
in
ルに書
China
いて
on
あ
the
るだけなんだ
label.
けど
Do you know who the
メーカーとかわか
manufacturer
る？
is?
はメーカー
Huh? Manufacturer?
つうかゲロカエル
Look,
にブラ
Ghetto
ンドとか
froggies
ね
don't
え
have a
し
brand.
ゲロカエ
Ghetto
ルはゲ
froggies are
ロカエ
Ghetto
ルみたいね
froggies.
それで
That's
完
good
結
enough,
してね
right?
おっさんマジウ
You're
ケんだ
funny,
ろ
old man.
教えとくと
So look,
ゲロカエル
Ghetto
なんて
froggies
作っ
aren't
てんじゃ
made.
ねえから
They're born.
マジバン
Like
バン売
bang
られてっ
bang.
から
Okay,
うーん
I agree with Bond on that sound. Bond felt like blah 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 blah. Bond felt like was about to. Okay, it was just the English, not me this time. Let's try that again. Bond felt like was about to bang his fist into the clerk's face if the conversation continued any longer. He paid and left the store.
チー
Man,
員の教
what
育
are
に
they
なってね
teaching
え
their
な
employees?
今時の若い連
Kids
中と
these days don't even know how to hold a conversation.
大体なんだ
Don't they have a dress code?
そ
Y
そうです
yes,
ね
you're right.
あ
Ah. Suddenly Eva stopped. She grabbed onto Bond's jacket to bring him to a halt as well.
見てください
Look.
バンさん
Bond,
どうした
what's up? Eva pointed toward a parked truck. Several cardboard boxes were being unloaded from it at that very moment. They were being carried into the back of the Garo Froggy shop. Oh,
明日発
that's
売になる
tomorrow's
ゲジカエ
new
ルの新作
G
か
Frog, huh?
あ
They're
ゲロカエ
Garo
ルンです
Froggies, actually.
ゆあちゃん
Good
よく見つけた
work,
な偉いぞ
I'm impressed.
いえ
Huh?
そんな
No. Normally the truck would have had a company name on it, but it was completely painted white. The boxes, however, had a picture of Gouda Froggy and the name of a company on them.
有限会社新興
Thinko LLC.
聞いたことある
You
か
heard of them?
えっと
Um,
ありませ
I
ん
haven't.
となれば
I guess we'll have to ask one of them. Misumi and I parted ways at the station, and I head back to the base. The whole time, it felt like I was wandering in a nightmare. I kept I kept seeing Nanami's face flickering in and out of my mind, a different expression on it each time. Nanami was the type whose feelings always showed on her face. When she was mad, she puffed out her cheeks. When she was happy, she grinned so much it made you embarrassed to look at her. Why? Thank you, Pichu. All those expressions and my memories came back to me one by one. It made me feel sick. What was that call? What had Unemi meant? Was the bandage I seen in her room at school? Where was she now? At school? Or had she gone home? Taku,
ほら
you
前
need
見
to
て
look
歩
where
かな
you're
いと
walking.
転んじゃう
You'll
よ
trip. With Rimi's help, I made it up to the roof. Oh boy.
どうしたの？
What's wrong?
これから 実家
I'm
に
thinking
帰っ
of
てみよ
going
うと
back to my
思うん
parents'
だ。
house.
これから
Right now?
急だ
Not
ね。
sudden.
歩いても
It's
30
less
分
than
もかからない
30
ところなん
minutes
だ。
away.
それで
And,
その一緒に
I
つ
want
いて
you
きて
to go
ほし
with
い。
me. I felt so nervous as I asked her that, I thought my heart would burst out of my chest. I was a little surprised that I was able to get the words out. I'd never been able to ask anyone for anything before. No boy.
嫌だよ。
No. Rumi rejected my offer.
私
I don't want to
行きた
go.
くない。
I never thought she'd refuse. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rumi had always done whatever I'd wanted. She'd always been there to help me. She'd always been there to support me. So, I thought she'd say yes to whatever I asked. But I realized now that I was silly for thinking she'd always say yes. I'd been arrogant. I treated her like a tool.
そう。
I see.
それに
And Rumi turned away from me, strapped her arms tight around her body.
それに
You shouldn't
Takumo.
go back either.
行かない方がいい。
それって
What do
どうい
you
う
mean?
実家には戻
Don't
らない
go
で。
home. Her voice was clear and hesitating, like she was giving me an order. I didn't understand. I didn't know what would make her say that. What look was on her face right now? I didn't understand.
わけがわか
I
ら
don't
ない。
understand.
あなたは
You don't need to know
何
anything.
も知らなくていい。
There was a tension in her voice, a sense of urgency. She was like a totally different person than she'd been before.
ここで
Just stay
この
here
コンテナハ
in
ウス
your
だけで
room.
ずっと生きていけばいい
Forever.
の。そうしてもらわないと
I need you to
困るん
do
だ。
that. She needed me to do that. Wait, this is a delusion, right? Right? And suddenly, a high-pitched sound stabs my ears. It was like a girl's scream. Nice, something stuck in the back of my throat. The wind blew hard. The air shook around me. The crimson light blinded me. I turned toward the source of the light, unsure what was going on. There, on top of the shipping crate, I looked up. And saw Sana Aoi holding her D-sword in her hand. The light was coming from the flashing D-sword, but something was strange. The last time I saw it, Sana's D-sword had been flashing with a blue light. The sound quickly disappeared. The wind stopped.
答える。
Answer me. Her voice was sharp. Her gaze was cold. I could see murder in her eyes.
これを書いたのは
Were you the one who
Oh my
wrote
God.
this? She was holding the essay with the IR2 equation scribbled on the back. It was all wrinkled, like someone had crumpled it up. Why would Senna have that? Why would she even be here? The words breaking and entering came into my mind, and I realized that she'd been in my room. But why?
答えろと言って
I
いる。
told you to answer me.
そうだけど。
Yes, but...
だから
So what? Takumi! And that was Kozuki's voice. She was behind Senna's back. She was clinging to Senna's leg, poking her head out at me. Her expression was incredibly tense. Run! Huh? Just as Kozuki shouted, Senna jumped. She raised the sword. Watch out! Yumi yanked me hard, and I fell backwards. I looked up the place where I had just been standing. Senna's sword had torn a chunk out of the ground. Its sharpness and destructive power were almost unreal. The impact had been enough to shatter concrete, but the blade was unharmed. I thought the D-swords are supposed to be invincible, and you couldn't even touch them. I remember what I heard before. The sword must have been rebooted. The four of us here had a shared awareness of Senna's D-sword. It wasn't a delusion anymore. It was real. It was a huge sword with the power to cut someone in half. If Rimi hadn't pulled me back, the beautiful blade would have sliced into me head first, and I would have died instantly. My whole body started to shake. Someone had just tried to kill me. Why? My mind was filled with questions. Not too long ago, she, Kuzubi, and I had been eating gare-gare-kun popsicles together. We certainly weren't close enough that I could call her a friend, and she'd still scared me. But it certainly didn't feel like she was going to attack me on the sight with a D-sword. I'm going to kill you. Senna looked up, glaring at me. She moved fast, even though she was carrying a huge weapon. She got into a crouch like a sprinter at the starting point and began to run. The tip of the blade tore into the ground as she got closer and closer. When she was close enough, she raised it high above her head. My instincts told me in an instant what was going on. She was serious. Senna was serious. I was lying on the ground, staring up, helpless and pathetic. I screamed. I couldn't escape. This was just so unfair. So sudden. How could it suddenly be game over like this? All that time I'd spent running away from Shogun. Now I died to a surprise attack from Senna. No. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And then, someone left between us, standing between me and Senna. I realized it was Rimi, just standing between me and Senna, with her arms spread out wide to block her path. Was she putting herself in danger to protect me? Move. Rimi, don't die. I don't want that. You should be careful around Sakihata. Suddenly. Or what Kuzupi had said before. The light began to pour out from between Rimi's spread arms. I don't really understand her, Nora. Rimi. Leave Taku alone. Brought her hands together around the streaming rays of light. They are shipping on us. Shining feathers of light appeared from out of nowhere and began to dance around Rimi. And in her hands I saw... Senna brought her huge D-sword down with full force, but she easily blocked it. Don't push him any closer to the edge. The thing in her hands was far too elegant, far too holy to be called a sword. It was like the wings of an angel. And then I understood. She, Mimi Sakihata, was also a gigomaniac. Ooh. Ooh, I like her. Stop. Can I have some of those? Senna Aoi was looking at her in sheer astonishment. The winged sword that had so easily blocked her weapon was clearly a D-sword. And if she hadn't used it many times before, she wouldn't have been able to block Senna's attack so easily. Yeah. Sakihata was a gigomaniac too, Nara. Kuzuwe was looking down at them from on top of the shipping container, as if she was a spectator watching a game. Her legs were dangling off the side. Senna was more than a little annoyed at her behavior, considering how she just ruined her surprise attack. But her gaze was locked to her front, on Rimi. Rimi's expression was pained. Takumi Nishija was lying on the ground behind her, moaning in shock. Senna was only after him. She wasn't here to fight Rimi. This wasn't a manga or anime. It wasn't realistic at all to try and fight someone with a D sword.
その男が何をしたか
Do you know what that
知っている
man
のか
did?
IR2 という
The
公式
R2 formula was his.
知ってるよ。
You know. She cut Senna off. Her answer was calm and sad, but clearly spoken. When she heard this, Senna's grip on her blade tightened even further.
それなら
Then,
タクを覚醒させれ
he
ば
awakened Taku.
もっと
Something even worse will
大変なことになる。
happen.
その前に
I'll
殺
kill
す
him before that happens.
あなたには
You
無理だよ。
can't. Senna decided it wasn't worth trying to talk anymore. She brought her weapon lower, trying to strike with it. Rimi, however, was simply standing there. With long strides, she could be there in 5 steps. 3 seconds would be all it took. Senna didn't hesitate. She strode straight at Rimi. She slashed with her D sword. Rimi tried to block it just as she did before, but Senna's attack was a feint. The blade passed through Rimi's sword and her body. She canceled the real boot. Right now, Senna's D sword was just a delusion. It couldn't touch anything. It couldn't cut anything. It couldn't kill anyone. But that was just what Senna wanted. Rimi had been ready to block the blade, but she was caught off guard for an instant. By the time she figured out what had happened, Senna already slipped past her and was just about 2 steps away from Takumi. Once again, to do another little boot. Now. Takumi's terror-stricken eyes were pointed straight at Senna, who made the real boot easy. The D-sword, now real again, was only inches from piercing Takumi's heart.
セナ
Senna. She saw someone in the corner of her vision. When she heard the voice, it stirred violent emotions within her. Her aim missed. And the blade only grazed Takumi's leg before slamming into the concrete next to him. Senna slowly looked up.
お前
You... and gasped. A man was standing at the edge of the roof, the sun setting behind him, his countenance like a ghost. His face was pale and ashen. His eyes were bloodshot and sunk deep into his head. His head was slumped forward and expressionless. When she saw him, Senna stopped caring about Takumi at all. It was the man Senna had chased for so long, the man she hated. The man who abandoned her and betrayed her family. And now he was right in front of her.
ようやく
I finally
見つ
found
け
you.
た
Senna took a step toward him. She gritted her teeth to keep the hate welling up within her from taking control. She readied her D-sword again. She took another step.
どうしようもなか
I
った
didn't have a choice.
私は
I had to offer up
お
your
前
mother
の
as a
母さんを
sacrifice.
生贄に捧げるしかなかったんだ。
黙れ
Shut up.
母さんの最
Your mother's son was
後
a
とて
very
も安
peaceful
らかな
one.
ものだ。
So Senna, don't worry.
だからセナ、安心してほしい。母さんのおかげで
Thanks to your mother,
素晴らし
the
い実験
experiment
結果
was
が
a
出た。
huge success. Her sacrifice
Awesome.
helped the whole
世
world.
界のために役立ったんだ。お前も
You can be
母
proud of
さんの
what she
功績を誇
accomplished.
っていい。
黙れよ
Shut up! The blood rushed to Senna's head. The man was now all she could see. She ran. She got there in an instant. Senna closed the distance between them in the blink of an eye, and when she was close enough, stabbed the D-sword deep into his body. This had been Senna's most fervent wish. She'd spent every day wandering Shibuya, just so she could someday kill him. She dreamed of killing him almost every night.
やっと母さんの仇を
I could finally get revenge for Mom. She tried to pull out the sword. She tried to back away from him. But the sword wouldn't come out. The man fell forward and embraced her.
ユズ
Get off me!
気安く触るな
Don't touch me! All the hairs on her body stood up in revulsion. It was far too late for this. The bond between Senna and her father had long since been cut. But for some reason, she was shocked to find that she couldn't push him away. His warmth, his big, broad chest. The reality of having her father here, right in front of her. Senna's hands were turning red. I...
私はこんなの
This isn't...
あなたが
が望ん
This
だ
is
妄想だ
the
望ん
illusion
だ
you
妄想
desire.
だよ。
She heard whispering, and then she knew. Errors slipped into dead spots. Psychic attacks. Illusions. Her delusions had been read. By the time she realized what had happened, it was too late. She lost her balance, and both her and the man fell off the edge of the roof. Oh. The ground, 8 stories beneath her, seemed so far away. All I could do was watch without understanding at all what was going on. Senna suddenly ran toward the edge of the roof and then, for no reason, lost her balance and began to fall. Her body was just about to disappear off the edge.
落ちる
Just going to fall. All I could do was whisper. I closed my eyes tightly. Suicide. Someone was going to kill herself by throwing herself off the roof. I didn't know why. I didn't want to know. She attacked me for no reason, and now she'd been punished. She turned out to be an enemy too. But no matter how much I waited, I didn't hear the sound of her hitting the ground. Nervously, I opened my eyes to see what was going on. Senna hadn't fallen. She was slumped over. And Remy was right next to her. Remy was holding onto her arm. Had Remy saved her? Senna had thrown away her D-sword and was crying like a little girl. What had just happened? As near as I could tell, Senna had just tried to kill herself.
辛い思いさせて。
I'm sorry for
ごめんね。
making you suffer,
でも、
but
しょう
I
がな
had
かったの
to.。What had Remy done to Senna? She was like a totally different person than the cheerful Remy I knew. Her face was pained. Her voice was sad. There were tears in her eyes. The girl in front of me wasn't the Remy I knew. Sakihata! I heard a voice in my mind. Kazuki was still watching us from on top of the shipping crate.
もう終了
You're done, right?
もしも
If you're still going to go to the Swamp Kapow with
しよ
Senna,
うとしてるならカズピ
Kazuki will stop you.
崎畑さんのこと
He'll take your body
バラバラにしちゃうよ
and slice it apart. A cold chill ran down my spine. Kazuki was still using her cheerful anime voice, but I could tell she was serious. Yeah,
もう
we're
終わ
done.
りもともと
I
葵さん
didn't
のこと
intend to hurt
ど
her
うこうす
anyway.
るつもりはないしタクの前から消え
If
て
she's
くれる
willing
な
to leave Taku
こ
alone,
のまま解
I'll
放
let
す
her
る
go.
それはそれ
That's impossible.
だって
Cause Kazuki and Senna are both friends with Takumi now.
お友達だもんね
Right?
そうでし
Right?
ょタクミ
Right, Takumi? You gotta think about anything. If you told me everything that just happened was a dream, I'm sure I would have believed it. I had Senna attacked me anyway. Was Senna my enemy after all? It's your fault. Senna looked up at me, her face filled with tears. She was still slumped over, and she hadn't even tried to wipe away the tears. She was staring at me with anger in her eyes.
お前のせいで
It's your fault, my
私の家族
family.
は
I'm confused. I could feel her raw emotions. But what had I done? I never bothered anybody. I didn't even know Senna's family. It was completely harmless.
無害だと
Harmless? She read my mind.
お前が生み出したものが
The thing you created might destroy the
世界を滅ぼすかも
world.
しれないっていうのに
Destroy our world? Was she just another crazy person who read too much manga? I turned to Remy for help, but Remy had her back to me and was looking out toward the evening sky.
無駄だよ
You're wasting your time. The way she looked, her voice. Was it just me, or did she seem so very, very sad?
タクは
Taku
何
doesn't
も知
know
らないから
anything. But it sounded like Remy knew everything.
ふざけるな
Shut up!
今渋谷を襲っている
Everything
混乱
that's
は
happened in Shibuya right now is because of that formula. Formula.
それ以上言わないで
Don't say another word.
タクは
He really doesn't know
本当に
anything.
何も知らないの
It felt like they were talking about me, but I couldn't follow the conversation at all.
公式って
Do you mean this
これの
formula?
こと
Kazupi came down from her perch on the shipping crate, carrying my essay. On the back of it, were the scribbles I'd done as a boy. IR2. This is the cause of everything was happening in Shibuya. Ridiculous. How could a bunch of scribblings on paper have that kind of power? I just drawn them to kill some time, I think. It was so long ago, I couldn't really remember, but they didn't mean anything at all. I just written down the numbers I'd seen in my dream. It was a dream that had something to do with the subject of my essay. Whose eyes are those? I'd used that phrase for a long time, and then one day, I started to see it more and more clearly in my dreams. In those dreams, I'd seen the numbers.
FUN の10乗
FUN, the 10th power,
INT
times
の
INT
40
to
乗
the 40th power,
イコール
equals IR2.
IR2
Senna finally wiped away her tears. Her eyes were red. She kept talking, still slumped on the ground, looking at me with anger and frustration in her eyes.
この公式をお前が生み
The
出した
second
瞬
you
間
created this formula, the world
世界は
split.
分岐したんだ
Mullen.
ノア2に搭
The
載さ
most
れている中で
sophisticated
最も
aspect of
秀でて
Nova
いるの
2
は
is the formula
中核
that's
システムに組み
integrated
込まれ
into
た
its central
とある
system.
方程式です。
Hang on a sec, guys, again. Sorry. I am back again, yay. Yes.
これは人類史上
This formula,
未だ
it's
回
said,
答
has
が見
never
つかってい
solved
ないとされているもの。
has never been solved at any point in human history.
ミレニアム7のうちの
One of the
一つか。
Millennium 7? Another name for the Millennium Prize problems 7 math problems announced by the American Clay Mathematics Institute in the year 2000. These 7 problems were all fiendishly difficult, unsolved questions in the field of mathematics, and anyone who answered one was to be given $1 million prize. As of 2007, only one of the 7 had been solved. That makes me wonder if any more of them have been solved now. It's many years later. I will look this up. Prize problems. Interesting. On Wikipedia, it says to date only one has been solved as well, but it said it was solved in like 2010. For his contributions to the theory of Ricky flow, Perelman was awarded the Fields Medal in 2006. However, he declined to accept the prize. For his proof of the Poincare conjecture, Perelman was awarded the Millennium Prize on March 18, 2010. But he declined the award and the associated prize money. Interesting. The Interfax news agency quoted Perelman as saying he believed the prize was unfair, as he considered his contribution to solving the Poincare conjecture to be no greater than Hamilton's. Interesting. So same guy, just he didn't want the prize. Fair enough, I guess. But yeah, still only the one solved to this day. Wild. No. Bad. The 7 unsolved mathematics problems with $1 million prizes being offered for their solutions. Math people are built different, yeah, for real. No. It's not one of the 7. There were, however, originally 8 problems included in the Millennium series. One was removed before the prize was announced. And that's the one NoAH 2 incorporates into its system. Why was it removed? Because it had the potential to spread misery and disaster throughout the world. I mean, it is a math problem, so believable. What kind of formula can do something like that? The formula describes a type of resonance phenomenon that occurs during the fundamental interactions of electromagnetic forces. Oh boy. The 4 forces that elementary particles exert on each other. They're electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, and the gravitational force. A theory that fully explains elementary particles and the 4 forces has not yet been created. If it was ever to be found, it would completely explain the nature of our world, from the smallest microscopic levels all the way up to the largest objects in the universe. It revealed the existence of an unknown power that manifests during proximate action between a specific electromagnetic pulse and a receiver. You remember learning about that in astronomy? Nice. They're really putting the science back in Science Adventure series right now. The research into silent weapons that every nation in the world built up over the course of 3 decades was instantly rendered obsolete. Finding the solution to the problem would make one equal to God. And you've solved it.
それはとても不
He
思議な
was
場所か
found
ら
in a
見つかり
very,
ました。
very strange place.
子供の
In a
落書
child's
きという
scribblings.
ね。IR2。
IR2.
ノア2の
The
いわゆ
so-called
るハードウ
hardware
ェア部
aspect
分
of
は
NoAH
こ
2
の公
derives
式によ
from
っ
its
て
godlike
神
powers
に
from
匹
this
敵する能
formula.
力を手に入れました。あとは
All
ソフ
that's
トウェア
necessary
部
now
分に
is to
相
get
当
the
す
code
るギガ
samples
ロ
from
マ
the
ニアックスのコード
maniacs
サン
that
プル
form
を
the
集めれ
software
ば
aspect.
ノア2は
The
本
NoAH
格的
2
に
will
稼働し
begin full
我々
operation
の望むも
and
の
give
全
us
てを
everything good we
実現
want.
して
かのアインシュタインが現代
Sometimes
に
I
生き
wish
ていればと
Einstein
思
was still
う。
alive.
彼は
I
高
hear
い
he
能
was a
力を持
powerful
つギガロマニア
gigalomaniac.
ックスだったと聞く。
家庭の話
They're
よ
more
り
interested in
現状が
reality
どう
than
なっているかだ。
hypotheticals.
ギガロマニアックス
They say
は
there were
世
only a
界
few
中に数える
gigalomaniacs in
ほ
the
どしか
entire
いないと
world.
いうではないか。
Can we find enough?
大丈夫なのか。
すでに5人分のサンプ
We
ルは
have
確
5
保しま
samples
した。
already.
ノア2稼働に十
We have
分な
enough
数
to
が
activate
集まったよ
NoAH
う
2 then.
だね。
ならば結構。
Good.
ただ
But the more
サンプル
samples
が
we
多
have,
ければ
the
多
more
いほど
powerful it becomes.
ノア2の能力は向上します。特に
And there's one boy
どうしても
gigalomaniac
サ
who
ン
is
プルを採取
particularly
したいギガロ
interesting,
マ
you
ニアック
see.
スの少年が一人いましてね。
だからといって計
It's
画
not
の
a good enough
遅延
reason
は
to
許され
delay
ん
the
ぞ。
plan.
ノア2の本格稼働は
When
い
will
つ
full
頃になり
operation
そうなの
NoAH
か。
2begin?
稼働前に最終
As
実
a
験
final
と
test
して
before activation,
サードメルト
I'm
を
going to
行います
initiate a third melt.
また地震を起こ
Another
そう。
earthquake.
予測規模。
How big are we talking?
想定では
Equal in size to the
関
Great
東大
Kanto
震災と
earthquake.
同レベル。
関東
The
大
Great
震災クラ
Kanto
スだと。
earthquake?
マグニチュード
That was,
7.
I believe,
Cute.
magnitude 7.9.
現在の建築基準と
Built-in codes and
免震対
seismic
策レベルを考
isolation
えれ
technology
ば
have come a long way
町に
since
かつて
then.
ほどの大き
It will
な
cause
損
the
害
same
を及
level
ぼす
of
ことはないでしょう。
だが
But the
犠
number
牲
of
者の数
casualties
は
will
フ
be
ァースト
vastly
セカ
greater
ンド
than
の
the
比で
first or
はな
second
かろう。
melts, right?
およそ5000人ほ
I'm
どといったと
estimating
こ
at
ろで
around
す。
5,000.
少なく見積もっ
In a minimum,
ですね。
that is. Is that a
問題が
problem?
責任は貴
You'll
様
take
が取るの
responsibility
だ
for
ろうな。
this, right?
腹でも切って
Do you
死
want
ん
me
で
to
みせま
commit
す。
seppuku right in front of you?
これが最終実
This will
験
be
で
our
す。
final experiment.
サードメルトが予定通り
When
の
the third
成
melt
果を上げたとき、
performs as expected,
ノア
will be
2
fully
は
complete,
完全なる完成を見る。世界の可能
and
性
all the
は
world's possibilities will be ours.
我らの手の中に。
Well then.
この公式をお前が生
In
み
the
出した
second
し
you created this formula, the
世
world
界は
split.
分岐したんだ。
分岐って
Split. Wait, this isn't an H game.
タク、
Taku,
もう行こう。
let's go.
話
You
聞
don't
く
need
必
to
要
hear
なんてないよ
this.。Yumi grabbed me by the hand and tried to pull me into the room. I could sense her desperation. She was afraid of something.
葵さんが言ってることは
Everything
全部
Zali's saying
嘘っ
is a
ぱちだ
lie.
し、
嘘はそっちだろ。
You're the liar.
葵さんもう帰
Howie,
って
just leave.
タクの前から
Leave
消えて
Taku
よ。
alone. What was I supposed to believe?
たかが数
How
式
could a
になん
math
でそんなに
formula
目くじら
be
立
so
てるんだよ。
本当に何も分か
You
ってな
really
い
don't
の。
know anything?
アインシュタインが唱えた
Einstein created the
E equal
equation
MC
E
の
equals
事情。
mc squared.
これが発
In
表
the
さ
same
れ
way
たこ
that
とで
equation
核
created
兵
a
器が開
future
発
where
される
nuclear
という
weapons
未来
were
が生まれ
real.
たように。
The formula for Einstein's special relativity theorem, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Or said another way, energy and mass are equivalent. Your invention of IR2 will have the same effect.
MC の事情
No,
と同
an
じ。
even greater effect on the world.
それ以上の影響力を世界に与えている。IR2、
IR2 makes the
沈黙の
silent
兵器を現
weapons
実のものとした。
possible.
沈
The
黙の兵器
silent weapons?
思考盗撮、
Mind
視
reading,
覚投影、
induced
五感制御。
hallucinations, sensory control. Those were the technologies that Sanaho told me about before. The the ones in the pattern.
ギガロマニアックスは特別
Gigalomaniacs will cease to be special. No.
異常では
Cease to
なく
be
なる
unusual.
これからはこの忌々
These
ましい
terrible
力を
powers will now
誰もが
be
自由に
usable
使え
by
るようになるん
everyone.
だ
All you'll need is a device
IR2 を
that
元に
IR2
作られ
makes
た装置によっ
possible.
てなもっとも
Of course.
その前に
Before
一
that
握りの
happens,
腐った連中
some of
に
the
独占
roads
され
risk
人
will
々も気づかな
monopolize
いう
the
ち
power
に
for
家
themselves
畜同然の
and
立場に
brainwash
な
the
るよう
rest of
洗
us
脳され
until
てし
we're
まうだろ
little
う
more than cattle. I didn't know anything about any of this. I had no idea. Even if what Seta said was true, I never meant to make anything like that. It was just a kid scribbling on a paper. You hadn't done anything wrong. Well. But then, yes, I am too.
IR2
IR2. He explains exactly how the Gigalomaniac's power works. So what that guy said was right. The most important person was the boy who invited whose eyes are those. He meant Takumi. Kuzupi's voice was cheerful, but it wasn't as innocent and pure as she was. Mimi said nothing. But Senna, her eyes wide, suddenly looked up and staggered to her feet. Why did she seem like she was having trouble walking? Was it because of whatever Rimi had done to her?
Kozue
Kozue.
お前
What did you say?
今なんて言った
Yuppie? Senna began to storm toward a stunned Kozupi.
おじしゃんって
What
誰の
man?
ことだ
The one who told Kozupi how important the D swords were. The first person I talked to since coming to Tokyo. He had a weird sign and a look that kind of made your nose go, ew. It said, the end is near, or something. Or something. Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? Yeah, I didn't know it was important.
あいつだ
That's him.
やっと
I finally
見
found
つけ
him.
た
Neither me, nor Rimi, nor Kozupi had any idea what she was talking about. All we could do was watch as an intense fury descended on her.
私は
I could finally
やっと
kill him.
あいつを殺せる
An experiment had been performed, but she never knew. She was a normal housewife, close to turning 40, newly pregnant with her second child. No, maybe she wasn't quite normal. Her first daughter was already a year away from high school, so there would be an almost 15-year gap between her children. She was worried that her daughter, who was currently going through puberty, would rebel against having a younger sister, but in fact, her daughter was overjoyed. Her husband was a scientist, and between his faith and his research, only rarely came home. Whenever he was home, he did his best to be a good father and a good husband. So, while she certainly had her complaints, her love for her husband was firm. The second child was born uneventfully. She was a healthy young girl who weighed 2,579 grams at birth. She named the girl Mono. Unfortunately, after that, her husband was transferred to a new location far away from home. Her husband wouldn't last a week without someone to do the chores and make the food, so she had no choice but to send her older daughter along with him. She was now alone with her newborn daughter, Mana. At her husband's suggestion, the two of them moved into the housing owned by the company he worked for, so rent was extremely low. Her family had originally lived in a condo in the suburbs, but it was far from the city center and hard to get anywhere. The dorm, however, was located right in the heart of Shibuya, and many of her husband's colleagues lived nearby. She'd have easy access to childcare, and if anything came up, she'd have people around who could help her. The place was extremely spacious. The bedroom, especially, was a favorite of hers. A huge mirror covered a whole wall, and on the other side, there was a big window. From there, you could look down at Yoyogi Park. She quickly became friends with the ladies in the nearby residences, and the corporate benefits even included a maid. She was proud that her husband was important enough in the company for her to have all these benefits, and was more than satisfied with her life of luxury. 2 years passed. Mona's development was a little slow, but she was growing up without suffering any major illnesses. She was, however, a very needy child. If she wasn't constantly held at her mother's breast, she'd start crying immediately. For the past month or so, Hana's mother hadn't been feeling well at all. The ringing in her ears was the worst part. It bothered her almost the whole day. But still, she couldn't let the maid or the lady next door take care of Mana. Mana couldn't stand to be away from her for a second. Not in the bathroom, not when taking a bath. Whenever she even thought of letting the maid hold her for a second, Mana would somehow know and start crying. It was, in a way, endearing to have the young child so resilient on her, or reliant on her. It also meant that she couldn't leave the house for an instant. The maid and her neighbor, though, were there to help. She was so lucky to have met them. And of course, things were gradually getting strange with them too. A week ago, she'd been talking to her neighbor in the living room, when the woman had suddenly started to vomit without warning. She quickly fled afterward, running outside of the house. Mana's mother hadn't seen the neighbor at all after that, so perhaps she'd gotten sick. Mana's mother then decided to ask her maid to go check on the neighbor. The maid was just finishing up for the day when she made the request. When she finished it with, "And I'll see you tomorrow," the maid suddenly began to cry. The maid just nodded over and over again before leaving. And that night, Mana's mother suffered terribly as the ringing in her ears got even more violent than before, and the pain threatened to split her head open. She tried to call an ambulance, but the phones didn't work. She tried to get the neighbor lady to help, but even that was too difficult. Her daughter started to cry violently, and the crying made the pain worse. She held Mana tight to her chest, enduring the pain. Suddenly the crying and the ringing in her ears stopped. The pain in her head was gone, like it had never been there. She looked down and saw that she was holding the shriveled corpse of a child. Before she realized that the whole thing was an experiment, her mind broke into a million pieces. An experiment had been performed, but it wasn't what he had expected it to be. He was a scientist in Nozomi Technologies, and a believer in the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light. He was one of the key figures behind Nozomi Tech's secret project NoAH, and the one who'd solved the riddle of the 1 to the power of 10 by int by the power of 40 equals IR2. He had offered his pregnant wife as a test subject for the experiment. It was a direct order from the church's leader, a person he admired deeply. They had also been the ones who suggested to make the experiment a success. It was called the Mana experiment, after the codename given to his wife's daughter. His older daughter was given to a church facility, while he monitored his sequestered wife and Mana 24 hours a day. What his wife had thought was a company-owned condo was, in fact, Nozomi Technologies' testing facility, and the location of the NoAH 2 prototype that he was working on. Mind reading, induced hallucinations, sensory control. His wife and daughter would be used to test the efficiency of these technologies here in the sealed lab. The effects of the electromagnetic radiation on the body were ill understood, and he had planned to cancel the experiments if anything unusual happened to his wife and daughter. An accident occurred almost immediately. Mana died roughly a month after being born. The cause of her death was unknown. It was an accident, one that nobody could prevent. He was deeply saddened and tried to cancel the experiment. But that wasn't going to happen. It's quite interesting, don't you think? That's what his employer had said. The man had been looking at the strange goings-on in the test lab. His wife had refused to accept the reality of her daughter's death, and treated her corpse like it was still alive. In fact, from his wife's perspective, she was. This is an effect of the NoAH 2 prototype, and in a sense, the perfect chance to test its abilities. His feelings on the matter were irrelevant. But before long, he too began to feel that his wife would be better off if the experiment continued. As he watched his wife through the one-way mirror, cradling his daughter's corpse, it seemed like she was happy with her life. She stared at the wallpaper on the opposite side, which looked to her like a window overlooking Yoyogi Park, and whispered softly to her daughter. 2 of the research staff took care of her. One would pretend to be a maid, the other, the lady next door. As long as the experiment continued, his wife's mind would be just fine. This was, he told himself, what was best for her. Perhaps his mind had broken before hers. And the more time passed, the more his goal changed from the completion of NoAH 2 to keeping his wife locked within her dream. And then, after almost 2 years, his employer's words suddenly brought all that to an end. We have enough data. NoAH 2 will begin full operation soon. There's no point in continuing this experiment. He fought back as hard as he could, but as a result, he was branded a traitor and removed from the project. And as a final thanks for his service, he was allowed to be in the experiment room, hands tied, on the day it was shut down. His daughter, whom he hadn't seen for nearly 2 years, had been brought there as well. When she saw him, she seemed confused. Dad, what's going on here? What did you do to Mom? What is she holding? You couldn't answer. The guilt kept him from even looking her in the eye. The horrible ceremony was about to begin. The neighbor lady had already become unable to tolerate the stench, and the maid had run out of the lab weeping at his wife's words. The device was shut down. The dream ended, and his wife broke. At the sight of her daughter suddenly turning into a desiccated corpse, at least that's how it must have seemed to her, she snapped, tearing out her hair and ripping the skin off her face with her nails. She began to laugh, madly, slamming her face again and again into the walls, before grabbing a knife and killing herself by stabbing out her own eyes. Mom! Mom! Her daughter was screaming and crying as she watched her mother's last moments through the one-way mirror. Mom! The lab staff grabbed his daughter by the arms and dragged her off somewhere. He didn't know where. He wasn't even allowed to follow the only family he had left. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So sorry. He blamed himself. It was all his fault. Whatever his reasons, when he opted to continue the experiment 2 years prior, it had been obvious that this was how it was going to end. Several days after watching his wife's death, he disappeared. Nobody knew where he was now. Sana ended up running off on her own, after angrily asking Kazupi some kind of question. Kazupi had gone after Sana. I had no idea what made her suddenly go crazy. I was suddenly trudging through Shimotokizawa. I was almost home. It wasn't even 30 minutes from the base. Was Nanami there? Shimitokizawa streets are busy, though not as busy as Shibuya. The psychic boy incident was still fresh in people's memories. Some would point and laugh at me, while others would even take pictures with their cell phones. I hurried home as fast as I could, suffering the feelings of embarrassment and humiliation.
ごめんね。
I'm sorry. Mimi was walking a little behind me, her eyes locked on the ground below her as she whispered. She said that at least 10 times on the way here.
黙ってて。
I'm sorry.
ごめん。
Didn't tell you. There's nothing I could say. I didn't understand Mimi. That had always been the case. Mimi had been there to support me. She'd been there for me. But there was so much about her I didn't understand. Until now, I'd always opted to just ignore it. Maybe that's because it felt like if any of those things I didn't understand ever came out in the open, Mimi would go away. And I was afraid of that.
と
But
ど
why?
うして
Why are you
僕と
staying with
一
me?
緒にいてくれるの
I managed to work up the courage to ask that single question. Why would Mimi want to be anywhere near a guy like me? Was it because she was like Yua and trying to set me up for a fall? But the answer wasn't what I expected.
あなたに
I
目覚めて
didn't
ほ
want
し
you
く
to
ないの。
wake up.
普通の生活を
I wanted you to
送
live
ってほしかった。
normally. She didn't want me to wake up to awaken as a maniac? Is that what she meant? Mimi knew more about me than I did myself.
一体
J-
君は
just
何
who
者なの
are you?
私は
Mimi hesitated.
私は
I'm your friend.
タクの友達だっ
I
て
think.
思ってる。友達で
I want to be your
痛いな。
friend. Did that mean she doesn't want to ask any more questions? Want me to ask any more questions, rather? I can read so good. But I had to ask.
僕はギガロマニアッ
Am
ク
I a
スなの
giglomaniac? You
そうとも言え
could
る
say
し
that,
違うとも言え
but
る。
you could also say you're not. Which was it? Was she trying to confuse me?
君は
Did-
IR2
Did you
の
know
こと
about
知ってたの
IR2? I'd heard about it.
聞いたことがあるだけ。
She didn't say who told her about it.
セナが言っ
Is
てた
what
のは
Senna said
本当な
true?
の
嘘だよ。
It's a lie. She was lying. She was lying when she said it was a lie. You could tell just by looking at her.
君は
Are you? I went to ask her another question but stopped. Is Jamie on my side or my enemy? If I asked and got the wrong answer, she might leave me forever, so I couldn't ask. If I just pretended nothing had happened, if I just let her lie to me, and everything could go back to how it was before, that'd be easier. I'd be happier that way, maybe. Yeah, I should just do that. I could pretend to be an idiot. I could just let her keep lying to me. She'd said to me enough times that she probably wasn't going to hurt me in the future. All I had to do was give her what she wanted and lead a normal life.
あ
Th-
ありが
Thank
と
you.
う
I looked away from her and thanked her instead of asking her a question.
守って
For
くれて
protecting me.
タク、
Taku. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I just silently followed the path home. Soon, I came to a street I recognized. It was in a cramped, quiet neighborhood. Once in a while, you could hear the sound of the trains in the distance. I'd known this place since I was a little kid. This was where I'd grown up. I followed the same road to elementary school and to middle school. I just had to turn down the narrow street in front of me, and home would be right there. I was scared to face Nanami, but I had to see whether her arm was still attached. I stopped and took a deep breath to calm myself. Then I went to take a step forward when...
待って。
Wait. I turned back to see Nanami was looking at me. She was on the verge of tears.
どうしても
Do you
行くの
really have to go?
ねえ、
Please,
行かないで。
don't go.
もう
You'll never
普
have a
通じゃい
normal
られな
life
くなる
again.
よ。私
I don't want that for you.
そんなの嫌だな。
What did that mean?
帰ろう。
Let's go back, okay?
あのコンテナハウスに。
Back to your home. Up on the roof.
私
I'll stay
タ
with
クが
you
望む限
as
り
long as you
ずっと
want.
一緒にいるから。それで
And we can go to school
一緒に
together
学校
and
に行っ
we
て
can hang out with
大地と
Daichi
3人
and
で
then on
た
the
わ
way
いもない
home we
話
can
をして
stop to get some
帰りに立ち食いそば
soba
屋さんと
noodles
か
or go to a CD
CD ショ
shop
ップ
or
とかに寄って
something.
そうやって
We could keep
こ
what
れ
we
から
have
もやっ
now
ていこうよ。
forever.
僕は
I have to
ナナミに
see
会わなく
Nanami.
ちゃ。
いないよ。
She's not
きっ
there.
と
I promise. How was she know? Was she lying again? Was there a reason she didn't want me to go to my parents' house?
私
I don't want
タクの
to
悲
see
しむ
you
顔
suffer.
見たくない。
Not again.
も
Stop.
う謎かけみ
Stop
たいな
with
こ
all
とは
the
やめてよ。
riddles. I was sick of it all. Was I supposed to just never understand what was going on around me? Or just keep playing dumb even if I wanted to? I couldn't keep playing dumb even if I wanted to. Everybody kept throwing mysteries in my face. I just wanted to remain ignorant.
実家に行っちゃいけな
If
い理
there's a
由があ
reason
る
why
な
I
ら
can't
言
go
って
back to
よ
my。parents' house, then tell me.
こんな中途半
I'm
端な
sick
の
of
うん
all
ざり
this
なんだ。
half knowing. Sick of it. I was the one who'd always decided to do things halfway, wasn't I? I was the one who'd run away from things. That's right. I should just keep on doing what I've always been doing. I should just go home. Nimi was right. I didn't need to see Nanami. And I went to see her and she was missing her right hand. What was I even supposed to do about it? Oh, what's up, Ponko? What do you need help with? What do you buy your crush? This is all you know. He likes ice cream and pasta. He was born November 9th. He likes baseball, traveling, been to Colorado and Mexico. And video games. He has a little brother and a bulldog. He's on the baseball travel team and he likes pitching. He's proud of his curveball. It's his birthday on the 9th. I see. I mean, maybe you could get him some baseball gear, but I don't know if that would be, like, too of, like, a necessary item, per se. Because while, like, necessary items are nice, like, it's not necessarily what a person would want for, like, their birthday type of thing. Could maybe get him a baseball novelty item. Like, when I used to work at a sporting goods store, we used to have, like, little bats. So something like that. Baseball team cap is a good idea, too, yeah. You don't know, he's so quiet in class. It might be best to just get, like, a novelty item, so like I said, like a little bat or something, or like something that happens to be like baseball shaped, so that way you don't get him something that he doesn't necessarily need, but you're also like showing like, hey, I know you're really into thing type of thing too. Or maybe if you happen to come across something that happens to be a dog in baseball, that could be a good touch too. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. But I feel like something baseball adjacent, at the very least, is a good idea. If nothing else. You go rest up, Ponko. Thank you so much for popping in. I do appreciate it. Get good sleeps. It'd be my fault, wouldn't it? Nanami would hate me. She'd despise me. I'd be the loser who couldn't save his little sister. I know for sure just how pathetic I was. If I kept everything vague and uncertain, I wouldn't feel guilty. Yeah, I should just do that. That was the best move. Don't look at anything. No matter how many mysteries people shoved in my face, I could just ignore them all. I could have myself away from the whole world. You really are a handful. You can't do anything without me, you know? No. In my head, I heard Nanami's bright, cheerful voice. No. If I ran away here, I'd never be able to face Nanami again. I'd never be able to come here again. Taku. I clenched my fist. I stepped onto the narrow street that led to my old home. It was less than 50 meters away. At first, my pace was brisk. Then I ran, and I headed toward the home where I'd grown up. 30 meters. 20 meters. 10 meters. 0 meters. And the house I knew so well. Wasn't there. Huh? The name on the plate was different. It didn't say Nishijo. The house looked different too. It was much nicer, much newer than the house I'd lived in. I looked around. I thought maybe I just stopped at the wrong house. But I was wrong. And besides that, nothing around me matched what I remembered. I thought for a moment that maybe I'd gotten lost or gone down the wrong street, but that was impossible. Everything on the way here had been just as I remembered it. The path here was the same, but my home wasn't here. I followed up the path of my memories, but what I remembered being here wasn't here at all. Instead, it was something else. I was seeing something new. I should know this place well, but it was like I was coming here for the first time. Jamai view. No. Rumi was standing right behind me. Her words were an instant rejection. There's nowhere in this world. For you to go home to. The light from the setting sun fell into the dark hospital hallway. This time of day was particularly dark. It was just before night fell, and the lights hadn't been turned on yet. The chaos and noise of dinner time had subsided, and an almost eerie silence descended in its place. Shogun was slowly moving down the hallway in his wheelchair. The sound of the creaking wheels echoed throughout the corridor. He passed several nurses on the way, but none of them looked at him or spoke. Shogun, for his part, didn't seem to find this unusual at all. Brown hands, seemingly made of nothing but skin and bones, turned the wheels again and again. Ami! As he passed one of the rooms, a patient named Yamai began to scream. He pointed at Shogun, shouting frantically. It's Ami! There happened to be a nurse in his room. She looked terribly confused. Look, Ami's back. She was going outside again. That's against the rules. There's nobody there, okay? The nurse looked around and chuckled. Shogun was right in front of her with his wheelchair. But still, she said nobody was there. You're teasing me again, aren't you, Mr. Yamai? But you won't get me this time. Nami.
Nami.
Nami. Tommy. Yamai kept screaming, getting angrier and angrier. Shogun ignored him and continued down the hallway, turning right. The cream-colored wall suddenly became black. Shogun didn't hesitate for even a moment before the wall. He kept going forward, and just before it seemed like he would hit it, the wall vanished. It simply disappeared, and revealed the hallway behind it. Shogun kept going forward. The hallway went on for about 20 more meters before ending, this time for real. There was a single door, which opened into a room. Shogun opened the door and went inside. It was a room that didn't exist, the one where there'd been rumors and ghost stories about in the hospital for years. And the name on the plate outside the door was Takumi Nishijo. Gigalomaniac is the next chapter. That's a fun note to end on. I love that. Well, I guess we'll find out more Saturday. Not next week. Saturday. Let's go. Heck indeed. Heck indeed. Well, what do you guys think? Got any thoughts to share with the class? Ah, indeed. I agree with that one. That's a very valid thought. Just, yeah. Felt. Dropping frames. Hello, frames, stop dropping. That would be nice. Hello, thank you. I've dropped a good portion of frames. But, like, I do have a video exporting, so frankly, I'm surprised not more frames have been dropped. Okay, this one. Yes, there we go. But yeah, that was... Yeah, that was something. Usual for Chaos Head, I suppose. Every time you think you're piecing things together, the game slaps down even more pieces to try to figure out. I get the feeling that we're going to have to get more than one ending to fully understand what's going on. So, like, even though we're rapidly approaching the first, like, regular ending, I don't think we're gonna fully understand what's up, you know? But, Catman is still live playing Dead Cells. I think he might have a problem. He's addicted. I don't blame him, but he's addicted. Maybe we can bully him into doing Twitch integration. I might go to sleep though. But the Twitch integration with Dead Cells is really fun. So if he has that enabled, you guys could probably play with that. Or just bug him to turn it on. But yeah, tomorrow, Peachy and I will actually be starting earlier at 5 instead of the usual 8:30 because we are going to be getting the NoAH World line from Steins Gate Linear Bounded Phenogram out of the way, and then continuing on to our regular content of Dungeon number 2. Peachy is joining me for Steins Gate, so I don't have to read as an actual child for hours. So, but yeah, so that's exciting. I hope you guys look forward to that. You have a sneaking suspicion that the endings in Chaos Head will have more in common with Nier Automata endings than most visual novels. I'm not familiar with Nier Automata endings, so I can't really speak on that. But, Yeah, until next time, I'll catch y'all guys later. Bye bye.